This conference will now be
Friday,
recorded.
7th June. I'd like to call this meeting of the Rome City Council Budget Workshop to order. Let's advance communication. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this chance to govern us to all that. There are no public comments at this time. That's correct. Okay. So at this time, we will begin the budget workshop. Take this over.
Thank you, Mayor.
I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all for giving us some time this morning. You may notice you have in front of you the PowerPoint for all of the slides, just in case the technology didn't work. We have those all printed, and you probably noticed this is the same theme as last year's budget. We are continuing down that same path of planning for today and tomorrow and managing the growth of the future. And frankly, I think we'll be in this mode for several years to come. As you know, I continue to talk to developers about a variety of things, just not only infrastructure wise, but wise. And so Rome will, in 5 years, not look a whole lot like it does today. And I know that it's positive and negative. And so we are trying to manage the positives as best we can and minimize as much of the negative impact as possible. So this is meant to be in workshop mode, which is the same as a regular council, so all of the same rules apply. But generally in workshop, it's a little freer in conversation amongst everyone like we did with orientation. So if you have any questions at any time, please stop and ask those, ask of each other, and we can deviate into any side conversation on these budget numbers as it goes along, because this is going to be fairly numbers heavy. And this is meant to just give you an overview of where we're financially at the moment, and then we will take feedback from council on priorities. I have several meetings with Mayor Crenshaw. In fact, we meet every Wednesday afternoon, and we go over the agendas, the variety of topics of things that are hitting the community, and have some direction. And we've talked about the budget, and it's given me some direction and priorities, and so we will talk about those at the council level today. Next slide, please, sir. So this is just a general overview. Of course, we have the agenda that's been posted, and you have it over there if you'd like to have a copy of it. It's a very widely posted agenda, so we can talk about anything financially related, from facilities to staffing, to general funds, utility fund, revenues, expenditures, debt, so that the council can get a good and thorough overview of where you sit financially in your role as financial stewards for the city. We'll have an overview of that budget. We'll talk about debt and where we're at in the recent propositions that were passed by the community. We'll look at general fund, utility fund. I'll give you some of my analysis, and then talk about capital improvement. I have also ordered lunch in, and we will have breaks as we go along. So we would go to the next slide, please, sir. All of these state the city fast fact you've seen before, and one of the things that I want to bring to council in this discussion, and I know some of this will be repetitive, but when we're presenting to council and you all are discussing this as a team, it's as much for you as it is for those in the community who will watch this thereafter. We are very fortunate to have a fairly large number of folks who take an interest in Rome, and they do watch our presentations either live or they watch them in the weeks thereafter. And so if it seems like it's, I already know this, you do, but the person who's watching it thereafter. So one of the things that is interesting to me is we incorporated as C general law in 1935. So we are not far away from our 100-year anniversary, and that might be something that we want to look at celebrating, which would be a lot of fun. And then in 1940, we actually switched and became a type A general law city. We've talked about those different types and what that means, and so we're not going to go over that again. We have about 5 square miles under the city limits belt itself at the moment, but we have about 19 square miles, which is in our E2J. And that includes just a, you can look on our maps online, you can also look at the one behind you. It's just a broad sweep of area that the city could eventually grow into. In 19 miles, the city is fully formed and everyone annexes in over the years. that will be a very large city at some point. So be mindful that that is a possibility. Our first water system, also, when the city was incorporated, came online in 1935. Mr. Dominguez and I had to fill out some water rate information, and were surprised to realize that the water system itself was that old. In 1967 is when we got into the wastewater business. So we've had public infrastructure for many, many years, and we are turning our attention to maintaining a good portion of that. We're very fortunate to have an elevated water tank that was built in partnership with the school district, and that was put online built in 2006, put online in 2007. Right now, we have approximately 611 homes. Council will see as we go along when we talk about development that there is a 10-acre project on Hickory coming forward, and I continue to talk with Perry Point, so we'll delve into those numbers as we move. We have 5 named subdivisions, 2 named subdivisions in the ETJ, which are Houston and Reunion, that while they're not directly in city limits, they will impact our growth. They will impact traffic as they are doing now, school district, school build, etc., because that's up to 10,000 homes in that particular, those 2 districts themselves. And then we have 1 named subdivision in the future, which is Prairie Point. Right now, the numbers haven't changed much from last year's budget presentation. Our average household income is just over 90,000, and our median household income is almost 80,000. So I know there's been a lot of conversation in the community. Those numbers, unfortunately, do affect some of the grants that we can apply for. There's been some discussion that our median and average household income is much lower, but it's actually not when you look at the entirety of the city. The average age of our residents are 34. We have about 1,453 that are over 18, and then we have almost 500 that are under 18. We have 5 churches in the city, approximately 44 businesses, and as you know, the 7,000 to 10,000 homes is coming on the community property. Next slide, please. The population growth continues to hold steady. I do expect it to change over the next several years, and one of the things that council needs to be mindful of in the community is that when a city, any city, but especially one that is in the middle of 2 highways or has highways within it, you have to be mindful that it's not just your daytime or your nighttime population that you're dealing with. You're dealing with your daytime population that you're providing services to. And so while you want to know how many residents call this home or lay their head in their bed, if you will, you have to be mindful that we have tens of thousands of cars that traverse through Rome every day that cause accidents, that shop in our stores, that use our roadways, a variety of things. So you have to be mindful that that daytime population affects everything that we're doing, and it's very easy, especially if you're not in the municipal business, to not give that much thought. So right now we're sitting at just over 1,900 residents within the city limits, and you can search in Google and find this number down to as low as 1,400 and up to the 1,900 that we get from COG. So we generally go with the COG numbers because it's a little more accurate. Over the years, from 1980 to 1990, we had a 27% increase in population. So it's grown. If you look at the slide deck from 2000 to 2010, that's a 198% increase when you go from 551 to 1,641. So we are growing. It may not be quite at the rate that was predicted in our confident analysis. And with the grant that we received that you all will award next week at your meeting, we will get these numbers updated. But comp plans are notorious for being very optimistic in population growth and other things, and sometimes it doesn't hit. So we didn't quite hit the population numbers that the comp plan specified, but it's still growing. And when you look at the numbers from 2010 to 2023, that's an 18%. So we're not going to belabor this chart. You all have seen it before. We also went over it through orientation, but I do like to keep it in front of council and the community because it does show a good overview for you of how your organization is structured. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. If we'll go to the next slide, please, sir. We do have some vacant or unfunded staffing positions from our last budget discussion. The part-time office office clerk, you will see there we converted that to a full-time administrative assistant. In part of our recent discussions, we still have a code compliance officer that is approved but not funded, and it's something that we might want to consider in this budget year. Public Works used to have a part-time admin assistant. We will be filling some of that role with the full-time admin assistant that's going to be housed at City Hall. So this person will help courts, utility billing, and public works in the background, and provide some additional support for phones and just general customer service in City Hall. The interview team recently extended an offer to a person, and once they finish their background check and all of their other ancillary documents that they need, we will hopefully have them in place within the next couple of weeks and training, so that will be very helpful for the city as well. We also apparently have a part-time residential traffic officer that is approved but not funded. There will be some conversation later on in this discussion as to future staffing needs and how council wants to give direction on that. But just be mindful that there are positions within your organization not found on your org chart that have been approved by council, but they have not been funded. So they're there, but they don't have a body in them, so to speak. Next slide, please, sir. So looking at economic development, when we discussed this last year, Quick Trip was in process and not open for business, and now they are. We are very fortunate to have that additional community partner within Rhome. It seems to be doing a very brisk business, not only in gas, but also within the store. They have even come in at this point and they have asked for a remodeling permit. They're going to do some interior work on the current building that's just been open for a few months, that I guess their corporate layout has changed. And so you may see some things a little bit differently on the inside of that store as they continue to grow and expand in Rome. The reunion and Blue STEM projects that are in our ETJ also continue to go great guns. The residential development, as you know, is being built by P&B. It's in our ETJ. It does have a commercial component. I think that we heard Mr. Pincott's talk at one of our community town hall meetings about the fact that he has signed a grocery store to that development area, but until we have some infrastructure improvements and some water availability, I don't know anything about a build time on that, but that is a major advancement for Rome and something that I think our community members would really enjoy, having a local grocery store that they can go to. The residents, as you know, are living in those homes already. We still struggle quite a bit with lack of understanding that they're not within the city of Rome, and that's not abnormal. We still have that problem with folks who are in New Fairview, even Shell Creek, and areas that they make the assumption because their post office or post office is Rome, therefore they must be in the city limits. And so we educate at every turn, and we provide them numbers and support for those that are handling water and sewer for that development or any of the developments in our ETJ, and we direct them to who they need. But it's a common problem that we would like to have the rest of our life as a city, that as we grow and as they stay in the ETJ, they will have a misunderstanding about what's available to them and have to provide that and redirect them to the person who's giving them their service. Next slide, please. So looking at Prairie Point, I have pulled in a professional services team that consists of P3, which is our bid developer who also handles MMD management research, that has that expertise to help us negotiate economic development with them. And I pulled in our financial advisor and our bond counsel because they have expertise in that area. I have extended the professional services contract to Star, which is the company that's looking at the property there in Prairie Point, and we will see how, if they would like to execute that contract, it will be on your agenda for next week. And a professional services agreement basically obligates those who are pursuing the development to pay for any of the related costs the city incurs, for legal, for engineering review, things of that nature, so that the city does not bear the brunt of paying for the development that's coming to the community. So I'm hopeful that you'll have that on your agenda for next week. Prairie Point would be about 300 additional acres that's already in the city limits, so it wouldn't expand our current footprint, but what it would do is expand our number of homes. It would almost, I believe, double to 1,200 single-family residential units and 400 multifamily units. As I have discussed with you all before, the other thing that we are talking to them about is the potential of a community park, which would be of great benefit to Rome. So we're hopeful that if this is a development that can come to fruition, that this would be additional growth for the community. It would finally develop that particular piece of property, and it would have a community benefit.
Yes, sir. I got a question for which will affect the budget. With those new homes, we must anticipate an expansion of the east side wastewater treatment plant, correct? And that would be paid for by the developer.
Correct.
Not?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So the East Plant currently sits in a really good position to handle whatever we currently need. So if there is additional growth in the developers, would be required to expand that, which is how we built it and how we will also configure the West Plant, because it should not be the city's burden to expand that. So we are hopeful with Four Star. I think they're a very good group to work with. I have talked with another company that has an additional 200 plus acres the other side of Prairie Point that is considering single family residential. It hasn't moved forward as of yet, but that is another avenue that's coming forward. And as you know, some of our biggest impediments to expansion or people developing in our area at the moment are water and wastewater. And so as we're dealing with wastewater, that's one thing. As you know, we're pursuing water from a variety of sources. And so we'll see how that transpires over the next 5 years. There are also very projects that are going on the property near Love's. I continue to talk with the owner of that property between 114 and the current Love's facility to put in some shopping and some fast food option on what may or may not. They also have discussed that there are some doctors that are interested in part of that center if they develop it in that area. We still have folks who reach out routinely about the old city hall and whatever council intends to do with that property. So that's something that, based on Mr. Loftus's agenda items, that we'll want to consider as we go through. There is that property in front of Bywell Estates that did, at least 6 months ago, have some interest. I haven't heard from anyone recently on that. There's also the piece of property right next door to City Hall, that empty field across from Dollar General and the post office area. There is some interest. They have that on the market, but I don't think that they've come to anything that I can report to you at this point. The urgent care center that was scheduled to be just the other side of the Wells Fargo building, I do not know if that is still in the works with Mr. Pincoffs. I've not heard anything on that project for over 6 months, so I'm not sure if they're still planning to come in or if that was a matter of we couldn't move fast enough and they went somewhere else. I don't know.
Was there a change in ownership to the healthcare services?
Yes, there was. So originally on that site, there was also plans for an expanded or satellite campus of Wise Regional Health, and with the sale of the hospital to the new owner, I have not heard anything more about that. So I do not have any concerns that that will eventually develop. With that many homes in that particular area and FM 3433 being such a major conflict, someone will come in and take that down for commercial use. I just don't know what it may or may not be. I would be happy with that. So the other project that I mentioned to you, acreage that's off Hickory, I am in conversation with the developer on an economic development agreement and a plan with the district. You all have considered that briefly before, and that should be coming back to you within the next 3 months for you to review and look at. That would be an additional 50 homes in that particular area. There is the townhome project across the street, the current city hall leased facility that seems to have some movements. I do not recall the number there, but that would also be an expansion in not only population, but tax base as it relates to multifamily in that particular area, which I think would spur some additional retail because we're starting to go next to an old town that people might be interested in that next door to Dollar General on that general location. Ace Hardware, as you know, has been approved. I do know they're expanding or doing some work at their just food store, so I don't know if they have shifted their focus to that store at the moment, but I'm confident at some point that they will start moving some things around over there at Ace Hardware. That's been on site and talked to them about things such as the septic as it currently exists. Some of the infrastructure chief has been there and discussed what quickly and everything for them fire needs. So I'm sure that will start moving. I would hope in the next 6 months because they were very keen to that going rather than this. I do think when we start talking about budget next year, we're going to have a different approach on economic development. We may see some more diversification. We definitely need in our city limits to help provide additional bills and tax and ad valorem diversification and property tax because we need to have that balance instead of having as much of it coming off residential as from what we have discussed before. So we'll see how all of those things transpire. So we are going to skip ahead to the next slide. This is a look at the current debt as it relates to the city. You all know that we have bonds that will pay off again this year, and so that will help us with the debt tax rate. It will also help us with the current amount that is outstanding. And then we will issue bonds later on this year in relation to Proposition A and B and C that was approved by the voters in the May election. We are currently working with our team to finish all of the bank reconciliations that were not done prior to that we hired. You all authorized us to hire someone to handle all those bank reconciliations. So she has those most caught up for each of the accounts. She is working with the pre-audit team to finish up some of the internal audit documents that we needed to put together for grants and for the PMB, the monies that we give with PMB for when they do inspection. So they pay our third-party inspector, but they also pay the city $100 for each inspection that's done on the homes in RVR. So we have audited all of those accounts down for the past 12 months and made sure that the inspections that were performed matched the money that the city was paid. We've sent that off to the audit team, and so I think we're in final stretches of getting all the pre-audit work done. Then we will send all that information to the audit team in Wichita Falls. It will come back to you all hopefully within 30 to 45 days. And then once all of that's done, we will be able to issue the bonds and the debt for those projects. And I'm hoping that that will coincide with the engineering work being done because we've got kind of two things running at the same time. So we'll talk about Proposition A, B, and C and the work as we get into the capital planning portion of this. If you'll go to the next slide. So this talks about the general fund bonds that we put together. You all are pretty much up to date on this, but I want to keep it in front of us as far as the timeline for when this debt is going to be issued. When I worked with the financial advisors on this before the election, I said it would be fall before we issue the debt, so we're not behind schedule. We do have to get all the engineering work done because we cannot put out bids until we have the engineering work. So I talked to Kimberly Horn, and they are getting that ramped up so that they can look at the west plant, they can look at the sanitary sewer line. Mr. Dominguez has reached out to Opportunity. We're waiting on some responses from them about test wells for Proposition A to determine the best placement for that and what the steps are for that. So as soon as the bonds are let, we are ready to move forward on those. Any questions on any of that? Okay, well, we're about to head into general fund. This is just a general overview that I wanted to make sure the council was aware of. I think you all have heard me say all of this before. It's not a big surprise to you as far as where we are financially because we've been going over this for the past year. But when we dive into general fund, I want to make sure that we have more time to spend there on because there are some details that I want to make sure that you and anyone who's interested is aware of. If you will go to the next slide, please, sir. So this is a slide we had in our last presentation. Property tax or ad valorem is one of the main sources from which we derive funds to pay for operation costs in the city. It also funds debt service. So property tax is over two different streams, if you will. You have the ad valorem under property tax that's called the maintenance and operations portion, which is what was just subject to rollback. So we rolled that tax rate back 10 cents. That money that council had allocated was going to be used for street repairs only, so we will adjust the budget probably at your July meeting, to remove those funds that we are no longer going to be receiving. I also sent you all a letter that we received from the county that we need to cut them a check for approximately $260,000 so that that money can then be refunded to all the residents. So property taxes collected in January at the rate that was set in the budget at the 437,815. Because the tax was rolled back in May to the 335 number, that's the delta that we would have put towards street repair with the 120 that was already in the budget. So that would have given us about $400,000 to use in street repair. So we will actually refund, or we will cut a check to the comptroller or the appraisal district in Wise County, and they will blessedly issue the checks to residents. I was afraid we were going to have to do that in-house, and we did not have the capacity or really the knowledge from which to move that forward. But when we, over the next couple of weeks, we'll get that check cut and sent up to them, and then people will start to see those refunds in their mailbox. One of the things that I did ask Mr. Shaw to put together for us is what was the average check, so that we would know kind of what we might be looking at as to, is it $10, is it $20 that people are getting back, is it $100, and that way that gives us some understanding of how much each check was issued for on average. I think that's another good statistic for us to have. We're going to talk about the property tax rate and the ad valorem rate as it relates to M&O and INS, and I'm going to give you some general numbers and some analysis that I've done, but we need to make sure that people understand that there's two separate components of your AV rates. The 335 that was rolled back at the May election that goes to handle your operations. And currently we need to consider our path forward on this, because the revenue that the city receives and the tax rate that's currently set does not generate very much money for operations. And we are relying very heavily on sales and use tax, which is what they call an income elastic revenue source, meaning it fluctuates drastically with the economy. Now, that's fine if you have most of your basic services already covered and you have a good amount of number of days in reserve, but we do not have full service staffing levels in police and fire and public works. And so those are things that we're going to have to consider and educate the community on. And I think it will become a little more apparent as we move through this why some of the other cities are seeing additional growth and service delivery for their residents that we just are not able to provide at the current rate that we are setting. So we do have one of the things to remember about your ad valorem rate, of course, is that it is more stable. It is based on the property values of everything within your community. It is not subject to people purchasing something and sales and use tax being distributed to us. If you look in the blue box with the rollback rate at the 335, 372, the average value home of approximately $200,000 is paying $670 to the city. That's it for operations. So that is, that's for all of the tax rate. That's for maintenance, operations, and debt. And that's not very much to a great extent. When you look at your budget in and of itself, as I've recently discussed with Mayor Crenshaw, he is correct. The majority of our taxes on your tax bill are going to show they go to the school district. That is just a fact in every city in the state of Texas. It's just the way that the structure is put together. Doesn't make it right or wrong, it just makes it what it is. So what generally ends up happening is people associate the city, quote unquote, your tax bill is $10,000. They associate the fact and they say, well, the city's getting $10,000 of my money every year, therefore I don't think our tax rate should go up. Fair point. But you need to understand that it's going to multiple different entities. And that could be the county, that could be your city, that could be a special taxing district, a school district, a hospital district, a library district, a water district. And so one of the things that I want to work on as we continue to evolve our budget process, and I've done this in previous cities, it's very helpful for folks. Municipal finance is complex, and you don't spend a lot of time in it. It's so much easier to just have a graphic of a dollar bill, and you break it out. This much of $1 goes here, this much goes there. My previous city, it was very hard for folks to understand that in that community, the city itself only retained 5 cents of every dollar. that was paid in taxes because it went to the districts, and they were in some pretty wealthy districts: South Lake, uh, Keller, and Northwest. And while those are wealthy districts, they also have a great reputation, and it's a double-edged sword. And this is one thing that I will tell anyone who wants to talk about Northwest IC being in Rome and the fact that it's expensive for a district. It may be, but it affects your home tremendously when you go to resale. People are looking for a house that is in a great school district for their kids a lot of the times. And if you have a healthy school district, you generally have a healthy uh, resale value on your home. When you are in a district that is not quite as high performing, then people will not be as interested in purchasing a home in that district.
Also important to understand recapture. So the school district, while they capture those funds, there are a lot of those funds that the district is not going to use because the state requires they pay back and sent to the less fortunate communities and used for other things.
Absolutely.
That's only something people need to be informed of.
Absolutely correct. You know, and it's interesting. It's like I say, when I say municipal finance is complex, it is because it's not just your municipality. It's your county, it's your all your other taxing districts. If you're in an ESD, if you have that for emergency services, if you have a crime control district, all of these things go into that tax rate. But because local government is known as the level of government closest to the people, the one that they can pick up the phone and call you and say, listen, I have a frustration with this, or I have a problem with that, or I really like that you did this, or I'd like to see more parks or more police. That's the joy of being in local government. You really make a difference in people's lives, and you are serving a great governing function for your community to make it a strong community. But you also sometimes get blamed. So when you think of the greater tax district and all the taxes that you pay, a lot of times people misunderstand and put that at the feet of the city, and it's not where it always belongs. So we have to educate, and we have to keep talking about those benefits. We have to keep talking about what a great school district they have to send their children to. I know I'm not in the Northwest School District, but if I was, I would love for my children to go to one of those schools, and I don't have that option. So there are pros and cons to every piece of it. We also have exemptions that you see listed there. We currently have a homestead, over 65 or disabled veterans. We do have armed service members and first responders who are killed in the line of duty, and then we have religious use or exemption. Some of those are granted or controlled as far as how much of an exemption at the local level. Some of those are state level. The most recent one that made the paper was the move-in exemptions for your home value from 440,000 to 100,000 for your school district for you to homestead that and have that type of an exemption. I know there's been some discussion on social media. I think we've discussed this before, that there was some belief that maybe sunsetted, meaning it was only good for a couple of years. I can't find anything that shows that's the case. So that was a constitutional amendment in one of our recent elections. So I think that 100,000 is there, and I do not expect that to go back down to 40. But if somebody knows that I'm wrong, I would love to see where they find that, because I haven't been able to locate it yet. Any questions on this part of the conversation? Okay. Next slide, please. Also, in looking at your main revenue source, sales and use tax for a city is a very large component of what comes in. The city is currently receiving over $1.3, $1.4 million in sales and use tax every year. And I want you to hold that number in your head, because that's half what we could. And I will explain that as we go through this process. So currently, and I'm going to move up your slide deck. I want to show you something. Currently, you see the state rate is 6.25, and that's across the entire state of Texas. Your local rate that you can opt for is up to the extra 2%, which brings it to 8.25%, which we currently have approved. It's sales and use tax is levied on all goods sold within the city limits. In Rome, as I show here, we use all 2% of that. Now, where we put that 2% is a little different than in some other cities. General revenue, I'll say we're getting about 1.3 million or 1.4 million in sales and use tax that we can use either for debts or we can use it for operations. That is only 1% of the 2% that we're allowed. So imagine this community if instead of 1.3 or 4, we were at 2.6 or 8. What we could do for public safety, what we could do for community parks, events, things of that. So currently we have kind of limited our ability to provide services because we are only capturing 1% of our sales from this tax. Okay. Where is the rest going? In 1988 or 1980, we approved a property tax reduction, which takes 0.5% of that off the table and returns it to the residents of the community. So if you all get your tax bill from January or whenever that was sent out by the appraisal district, there should be a printed notice on there that says your property taxes have been reduced by X amount of money because your city has approved the property tax reduction of 0.5%. So not only does this take a good portion of operational monies out of your budget, but it also falsely drives down your ad valorem rate for what we need to provide services because it is lowered based on how much sales and use tax you collect. This is the same problem that the county's having right now because that other 0.5% way back when was approved by every city in Wise County that any sales and use tax collected within the county, within the city, is shared with the county, and that drives down the county's tax rate. And that benefits not only the residents within the city limits, but the residents that are not in the city limits. So we're providing services to a great degree for folks who are not in our city limits, who are not paying our taxes because they're in the county, because we're sending 0.5% of our money to the county level. This is something that's been discussed at that regional mayor's meeting because it is a concern, at least for some of the folks around here. Now, we have other things we have to deal with as well, but I want you to be mindful of the fact that 1.3 or 1.4, we are heavily subsidizing your operations rate with, because our AP rates, our property tax rates so low, is further being reduced and diluted because we're exporting that money to somebody else.
And do you know what the city gets from the county for that 0.5% that we pay them?
So we do get some benefits as it relates to fire. They do provide some money. Estes, do you know how much the county gives us each year? I can bring my budget with me. For county, for fire, how much do you give us? Like 60 or 80? Do you have your budget? Oh, perfect. Thank you, sir. You are the person. So we're about, in this current budget, we're getting $86,000.
86,000
Out of several hundred.
Seven, probably half of that sales tax. If we get 1% and they're halving that, so 600,000.
$700,000. $600,000 to $700,000 that we send to the county every year out of that sales and use. So it's a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge to provide services and fully fund without changing your ad valorem rate. It's coming from somewhere. It's one pot or another, to use the mayor's analogy. Two of our pots are being sent off. One's going to the county, one's going back to all the residents as a reduction in the tax rate. But is it really? Because we got to make it up somewhere. And so we've got to figure out. I don't know that we can do anything about the 0.5 cent to the county at the moment because this may be a county-wide vote to change things. But we can talk about this. So that extra $700,000, if we converted that property tax reduction to a crime control district and we use it to fund police services, we could fund our police department. We could take that burden off the general fund, and then we would have enough money to handle the parks and events and other things that we don't currently have the depth or the capacity from which to provide that our community is clamoring for. So we have to figure out What are we going to do with this? Because as the community continues to grow, that is going to become an astronomical number that we're not capturing for operations or for debt service. And that's the beauty of the sales and use tax. If we had this half a cent, we could fix all these buildings and pay for it out of sales and use tax instead of paying for it out of the debt rate. So you're basically using somebody else's monies to pay for your facilities and putting that wealth into Rome. Because most cities in Metro Dallas or Fort Worth, your residents are transient. They're coming in and out. And so I don't have the numbers, nor can I run the numbers. How many residents shop at QT or Dollar General or Big C or any of these others? But I will very solidly bet you it's a good 80% that's imported monies for Rome in that sales and use tax. So basically, if this is converted either back into general fund for debt service or it's converted to crime control district only for public safety, and you're freeing up the other money in general fund, then you are using the wealth that comes or the revenue that comes from people who don't live in the city to benefit your community. This is the same thing going when they changed. They had the same property tax reduction of 0.5%, and they converted that to what's called the municipal development district. Mayor Holmes came to talk to you all about this before. They're using that for all of their economic development up and down 114. They're using that for their parks, for all of the events that they put together, for basically community block grants to improve infrastructure and businesses within Boyd itself, to snazzy up their shops. We don't have that tool in our toolbox from which to benefit the residents of Rome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, not only is Boyd getting 0.5% from the sales tax, you're also getting pretty much double the property tax than we are for maintenance and operations.
Which is why Boyd and the other the debater, you see all of those where we should be sitting, you see them having amenities to offer their residents and their community that we don't. Police protection, fire protection, community event, development. It's a shop. Things of that nature that does not have, that we have heard from residents that they do. So at some point, we need to have a conversation at least about this 0.5%. What are we going to do with that? And we need to get it on a ballot for the voters to make a decision, which you're going to have to educate voters on what that means, because that wealth, that revenue is coming from folks who don't live directly in Rome, and we are not using it to our best advantage. Okay?
Name property tax.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's going to be a hot button. We've got to come up with some technology to express what our sales tax.
And I agree with
Sorry, I think the teaching point also, the way we did the bond, with the leadership there just to educate, was also pretty critical.
and if this is converted to crime control district, that is South Lake uses to their advantage is for if not all of their police services, but for both of it. And that is very helpful for that community. And so even if it's all the crime, even if you redirect it to PCD, you're taking the cost of the police department, which I think is currently at about $1 million, to general fund, and you're reducing that to 300,000 because you're paying for it for sales and use tax instead of paying for it out of general fund.
I also like the idea of increasing the crime control with money from people who are not living here, because that's a lot.
Yes, ma'am.
Fire. A concern that I have is that people get in for election and it's going to be another key.
It very well may be. But the thing is, we can put this on the agenda every time. And eventually, people will be educated enough to make an informed choice that may help us with some of these constraints in general fund that we don't currently have the ability from which to fund the services people say they want.
Okay, but if we hear what listen to what everybody's saying. This is going to be on your list in the future. We got to find a way to take it. The problem in Rome is messaging. That's how we. That's how the bonds pass. That's how when people understand the truth, when they find out what's really going on, people have, they sin. In the future, we got to find a way to have somebody on staff that is our PR person, that knows how to do messaging, knows how to utilize the social media stuff. And, that's something for the future if we can get that. Because this right here is that makes sense, doesn't it? If I think we can make the taxpayers realize, yeah, that makes sense. Let's spend other people's money, but it's messaging. How do we get that across? So in the future, keep that in the back of your mind.
And think about as the businesses continue to expand, think about when Ace Hardware comes in. They're going to generate sales use tax right alongside everything else. And there is no incentive to share any of that. So out of this 1%, right, that we're getting for sales and use tax that's going into general revenue, we agreed to share a good portion of that back to QT. So we're not going to get as much of that as we thought for 5 or some odd years. I need to go back and refresh my memory, but that's the type of thing that we have to look at where our revenue sources are coming from so that we are not, so that we're leveraging revenue sources from folks who are not just residents in Rhome, which has been a challenge in the past. And this is how some of this budget analysis is so good, is that hopefully it will educate the community as to where it's coming from and how it's being used so that we don't have more of this misinformation that the city's diverting funds where they shouldn't. This is too complex to divert it to places where it shouldn't. If you're reviewing it like you all are reviewing it, and if you are getting the reports, being the financial stewards that you are, this is difficult to divert. It has to go where it has to go because these things are audited. We now have audits that are dive audits that we did not get necessarily. We got them for the level of complexity our finances were at that time. They're more complex now. So we are getting, for instance, I had to go through and create a report for every address that was inspected in RVR. And I had to match it with the inspection report for every address to make sure, line for line, that they had billed for the inspection and we'd gotten $900. That's never happened before in our budget. Blessedly, it was spot on. It wasn't an issue at all, but those are the type of things that in tightening our financial outlook and our internal procedures, we are enhancing and making sure that we are being the good financial stewards that people are asking us to be. So we've come a long way in the last 4 years. It's been an iterational process. Each year gets better, and I expect next year will be even better. So this is just part. We talked about this last year, but we have so many other bigger pieces to deal with that we could not spend any time here. So I'm trying to put some numbers to the issue so that you all as council understand and make a good decision. Because to me, this is both of these, specifically this one is a loss.
I feel like even property tax reduction, most of the bulk of the county residents within city limits, correct? You would think that they would want their sales and use to go to the city, but I don't know. They don't. They want it to go to the county.
If you think about it, it is everybody's county tax. So those who don't live within the city limits, you're getting a benefit that you didn't necessarily have a hand.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because you're leveraging the city's sales and use tax money that you're not a part of a city that's providing those services. You're not paying taxes to that city, but it's benefiting you as a county resident.
So the local one, is that something that we want to start talking about putting on the ballot for November?
I would recommend.
Do we want to maybe possibly do that today to try and get that pushed forward?
So what's the difference in a crime control district and an emergency services district?
Two different things. And it's something that we probably want to review all of these because crime control district, municipal development district, there's another one. That's that you can divert that type of stuff to, so it will help alleviate some of the burden on general fund. But an ESP is a separate thing altogether.
In the guidance staff on the budget, I felt that our priorities would always be one, our people. We got good people, and good people. Number two, our infrastructure. We got to fix our bones. The veins and bones. We got to fix water, sewer, and our services. And number three is our. We got to get some places for people to work and upgrade the stuff that we have that we're making do with. I believe, and I would like to see, and that's up to the county, where this money would go. You know, the crime district is great because you all know the police department. Everybody needs people. Everybody needs this, that, and the other. Let's look at those three priorities as you decide where you want this money to go. That's all.
So what is it that we need to do? Can we just kind of have you direct you to that and don't necessarily need to make a motion or do
Yeah,
anything?
just give me some direction on what you want me to research, and I'll bring it back to you at another meeting on Thursday evening.
Okay, so what do you think? Anybody have the input?
I like the crime control district. It sounds like Staff Rhome just recently went to it. It really, it not only helps the police department, but it, on the back end, your city is now, it has freedom. So they can really do a lot more on the back end with wherever you want to go. And at the same time, you're beefing up your police department to provide that.
Well, I like the idea of bringing up funds. If it's funding, crime control district is funding the police department. It frees up funds to do other things within the community. I feel like that would be a good thing for the community. We have to get the education out.
Because it will affect. I don't want to mislead anyone. This will be a change. But in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at a small change on an annual tax bill versus the hundreds of thousands of dollars that is being lost to provide the services that the community is clamoring for, you all have to put on your owner's hats and you have to make that decision, or at least consider it, as to which direction you want to go. If we had a robust and extremely diverse tax base, this wouldn't be an issue for us to discuss, but that's not where we're at. And as we grow and as Rome continues to add residents and businesses, now there's a problem with the microphone. It's off. There's something, we don't know what the problem is. We tried to adjust it before we started, so we're going to have to call the vendor. So that's something for us to look at, and I can do some research as to where this money could potentially go, and you all can make the ultimate decision. I also believe, Matt Crenshaw asked me a question, I don't believe it can go for public works, but I do think it could potentially go for roadways. So it's TCDs or however you use this has to be reviewed routinely. So you have to pre-up it. So if it's got a sunset provision, at least the last time I researched it, and so if say at some point you determine, okay, we're going to put it to this, and 5 years we want to put it to this, it gives council another opportunity to consider where it goes.
I know I'm probably already aware of it. If we do use it for the, uh, the police chief needs, he needs another sergeant. Likes to get a couple of moto cops. That's money that we can use to improve our police department with people and take care of our people that we already have. It's up to you guys.
And it'll give them hopefully a CAT system. I mean, it still blows my mind that we don't have that set up yet.
So yeah, I mean, considering if we go to another dispatch, Decatur or whatever that we're thinking about, that could also fund a lot of that.
So that's, it could fund that, but that's some conversation we're going to have as we continue this, because that's a touch point.
Back to the education piece of this, defining exactly what it's going to be used for in years. That is very important because if they don't understand, it's just something.
I also think the idea of a crime control district is something that everyone that most can get these homes. So we're looking at, we're not talking about something extravagant. We're talking.
Yeah, it's basic service delivery, and frankly, for any city, um, community policing, crime control is paramount to everything that goes on within that community. Because if you don't have a safe environment, no one wants to live here.
All right. I believe we all understand that, that's what we got to keep this moving. So if you'd like to give staff direction to pursue this, come back to you guys with more information or whether to get this on the ballot. Uh, just give her the walking papers now and we can move forward.
Yeah, I think that it's a good idea. I mean, the citizens are voting, so they vote yes or no, whether they have education or not, and we can put it on the next ballot. That's the case. I mean, like, we can just keep on doing it.
I believe it's a healthy thing to do for the city to reclaim our past.
Just essential control. Based on the back end, it really helps us out. So we do need another firefighter. We do need somebody in public works, or we want this park. Well, now we have the PD eventually potentially paid for, especially with ACE. And now we have this.
Yeah, I think that's what we all kind of thought. The crime control.
Thank you. I will move that forward. You go to the next slide, please, sir. This is another one of the main revenue sources that we have within the city. It's fines and fees. This is kind of contains several things within this bucket of money. It's your building permits, which we do receive about $100,000 a year in building permits. The bulk of that is going to be from those inspection fees for the homes within RBR, and at some point those will taper off, so you can't rely on those heavily. The other is court revenue from citations, credit card fees, notary copy fees, and charges for open records. And so all of those make up different components of that particular line item within your budget. We also have grants. We have benefited from several of those over the years. We currently have the $350,000 grant for the CDBG grant for the rehab of well number 6 for the radon. We also have a approximately $300,000 grant from, can't remember the state agency, but it allows us to update our comp plan. And so you all will look at that with Mr. Loftus's help at the next meeting on the recommendation on who to award that to. We have hotel occupancy taxes, which are generally affectionately called HOPMO, hotel motel taxes. Those are levied when a person pays for a room at a hotel. I will tell you that we've had some challenges collecting HOPMO taxes from Motel 6, and so this is something that I will be bringing to you all in future conversations. It has a few hiccups in our system, so I'll be bringing that to you to look at and determine which way we want to move forward. Any questions on those two? So generally, we put all the revenue in pots and we disperse it out. And I just want you to understand where the pots are coming from. And we're very conservative. We look at the trend lines for many, many years to determine. I never recommend do what I think you get, because then you short service provision and you have to do budget cuts. And it's better to be conservative than not. Okay. So looking here, switch back. This is your tax base and your certified values for all the property that's within our city limits. So when you look at it, we were at $120 million back in 2014. And we've more than doubled that, or right at more than doubled that since 2020. This is affected by the amount of exemptions that people have, the amount of protests that they file, how much property we have an ag exemption, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see that this has showed a healthy trend upward in the past several years, you'll see that it's just about $5 million difference last year to this, which shows that we don't have current a lot of growth that has changed that ad valorem base, or that property tax base, unlike some of our growth cities that are getting new homes or getting new businesses or other things. So we've been a little in the past couple of years when you compare that. The message puts out an article each year that shows tax base growth for each city. We've generally been in the bottom third of all of those. If the homes come in on Hickory, if we have townhomes come on, if we have certain Perry Point come to fruition, that will change the price. So we could very easily see that number double, which is great because the less impact is to the current 1950 folks who live in Rome. We're spreading that tax base out amongst a lot of people, which is important. When you stay in a very small city, 500, 750, then you've got a limited number of folks who pay for the services that are needed, but they still need the services. So, the broader the tax base, the better off we are within. That's why we talk about how to manage this growth. Any questions on this? So then looking at the next tax rate slide, this one tells a very interesting picture. So your tax rate history for the past 20 years that I brought from 94 forward or 30 years had a high point of 63 cents, 64 cents per $100 valuation. We are now half of that at 36. I want to take this into context that this tax rate pays for everything the city has to do, and no cost has gone down for it. So whatever was for at the 64 cents, definitely might have been debt, it might have been operations, I don't know, because that was back in 2002 timeframe, but we now have half the money to double the cost to try and provide the services. So a lot of the conversation that people have been a part of on social media that the city is wasting funds and we have salaries that are inflated is not a correct statement. Definitely not. Definitely not a true statement. So when you look at this entirety and you look at it as a visual representation, without any growth, when you've made this beside the tax base and the fact that it's not growing, this city is stagnant at the moment because we're not reinvesting. We know we are with Proposition ABC, which is an amazing thing. We are ever so grateful. But if this continues to stay at this 36 cents and we don't have tax base expansion, we will never get to the space that people want with events. Enough staff, enough police officers to patrol the highway, enough firefighters to respond when one of their loved ones has an issue. That's just a fact. The numbers are not going to change, and no matter how I analyze them or bring them to you, I can't fix that. So I want council to understand, because I don't see in some of our previous budget discussions that we've gone to the steps in the analysis, but that again is part of the budget iteration. That's normal. But we have to start educating people, because for too long the loud voices in the room have been that the city misappropriates funds, they staff, they're overstaffed, they've squandered money. We have not. Your audits have not put that out. I don't find any mismanagement in any funds, anything that I have looked at. And we are doing the best we can with pretty much half the money that the cities around.
That tells us where we are right now. Double the cost, half the area. If anybody wants to come back and say this city's wasting money, point to that.
Next slide, please. So this is our tax rate shown in a different configuration just for the past 5 or 6 years. One thing that we tried to do in this current budget year, as you all know, we tried to maintain a steady tax rate of 437,815, so that as the tax base grows, People tax rate doesn't change, but you would get that capture of the revenue of would have been $260,000 that earmarked for roads. We responded to what the community said they wanted. They wanted to know where the money was going. So council restricted those funds for roadways only. Granted, it was not approved in the rollback, so we will adjust. That's not going to be the issue. But if you could get a steady tax rate and set it and hold it, North Lake does that, Westlake does that, Hoyt does that, Decatur does that to some extent, then as their tax rates grow, they're still capturing that growth revenue and they're reinvesting in those cities. Does that make sense? Next slide, please. Now, this is the conversation that we are higher than anybody else. You'll see Boyd is at 66 cents. They set and hold. Northway's at 29. They set and hold. Both of those cities, their tax bases are drastically different. Their diversification of their tax bases is drastically different. They're getting sales and use tax. They have businesses. They have property at Rhome as far as homes. So very, very different. Next closest to us in Roanoke, we are nothing like Roanoke in diversification. But our tax rate's the same, which is why we are still underfunded in being able to do tax meetings, which is why you have one police officer on duty. With a city with this highway miles in it, that should not be.
I mean, how often can you request? Can you only do the tax rate annually?
He said that every
Is
year.
it annually? People want to roll it back.
And it only takes about 30 years based on the and that's not possible. So this is something that I should struggle with is out there making statements that are not based on numbers. It's based on maybe personal experience or emotions, but it's not based on the numbers that are being borne out within the budget documents. So when you look toward and Justin are doing, which are they all have amenities that our community members say they want. We're not going to get there. We're struggling to do the basics. Okay. Next slide, please. Now, when you further flip that out into operational costs, Boyd has only 48 cents to use for operations. Bridgeport is 40, Peter's 42, Justin 48, 51. 21 cents. That does not generate enough money for us to rely on that to hire the police officers that people want to have on staff. To bring the firefighters in, that if your home burns down, they can respond. To deal with public works. I will tell you, our public works department, with God bless them, the 3 people that they only have now, are dragging on a flat wheel because we can't fill the 4th position. They're doing things like providing service to a single mother, dig up their food box because the single mother can't do it. They're going that extra mile to be personal, to provide that level of service that you would want as a resident with 3 people. How many people working for you? At least, I think it's close to 12. Yeah. So, this is the stark reality that we're facing in Rome. It doesn't have to be that. So, absolutely correct. They educate, they provide the services that people want to have, and they don't get the rollback. I think at least the last 2 questions have been presented by the same person in the community. So it's a challenge. But again, it's misinformation that is put out that I cannot tell you why. I can just tell you that it is. And we've done a tremendous amount of budget analysis and revenue and expenditure analysis does not show that. This is just something else to look at from that standpoint, looking at M&O and INS. So when you look at Roanoke, they're at 18 cents and their debt rate's at 16. But think of all of the sales and use tax they generate. Same thing with Norfolk. So you're supplementing where you get this money from with sales and use tax. You see these things higher because when you look at how their diversification is and where their revenue streams come from, it's very different than these two. And as these cities become, especially Decatur and Bridgeport, they'll put their cheaper than some of the others indicators to kind of see. But you'll see this number come out because they can use sales and use tax to pay for a variety of things that they need. So understanding where your money comes in and where it goes out and how it's sourced is critical to make the right city. And I don't think analyze it. But now we are. Next slide, please.
So, I mean, the only hope is really just council voting to keep the tax rate the same. It's not beneficial. It's just managed.
Managing the court, managing the transparency, everything that we're doing finance, and then educating the residents so that they make an informed decision they want to make. All right, so fund types, just overlooking those. In general fund, you have 4 departments that are being allocated. You have administration, building and development, court, and police. For some reason, fire and parks still remain their own separate fund. I would like to fold these up here because if we have that all in cash and it's all in one fund, it's less checking accounts to manage and balance, and everything is all within the general fund and utility company, which is customary. I understand that fire fund and parks fund were put together back when we had community volunteers, and so they would go to the bank and start their own checking account for each of those areas because that was their area to oversee, which was very helpful at that time, but we've outgrown that configuration. So I've talked to our financial advisors or our accountants about how we transfer those and bring those back underneath, because right now what you'll see in your budget, general funds transferring money out to fire and transferring money out to parks. It's just added internal steps that aren't necessary. You can clearly document all of that within your general fund budget or company that's separate fund. Then under utility funds, it's just water, sewer, and food. Looking at general fund history as far as revenue, so this is all the revenue that's coming into the general fund from all those sources that I mentioned to you. So it's use tax and from ad valorem property tax, and this will service both operations and your debt. And you can see from 15-16 we were just under 2 million to currently 23-24's budgeted numbers are almost 3.3 million. So you can tell that that has grown considerably, but that number would be much higher if we had another 1.5 or 6 million in there from the sales and use tax to handle some of the things that we need. Next slide, please. So this is just looking at property tax revenue. And this number is now, well, this is correct, I believe. I need to make sure that I've taken out that 260,000. But you can see this hasn't really fluctuated much in property tax revenue over the years. Next slide. So then looking at just the property tax and operations, when you think about the last 3 years and where your operational costs are coming, we're generating on ad valorem under $500,000 that's supposed to pay for all the operations of this city. That's police, fire, administration. If we didn't have sales and use tax, we would not be able to make our bills. So this is one of those, when you look at funding streams, like the school, sales and use, from debt and from operations, and one of these legs is way shorter than the other. So you're when you look here, I listed the tax rates. So this is from the previous slide, right? That I showed it in the downward trajectory. The green is the overall, the blue is your debt, the red is your operations. Excuse me. Blue is operations. So, no, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Red is operations, blue is debt, because our debt rate is small. It's only 12 cents. So you can see that all of that is still on the downward trajectory, but yet costs have gone up exponentially, which is part of the reason why when you think about that, and as we get into the analysis of utility funds and where we're at financially, um, we've lost a lot of revenue in the utility fund. That those funds, bonds that we just passed, are coming out of general fund because the utility fund can't service it. At some point, we'll have to cut that out of utility fund because that's a considerable difference that we would not necessarily think.
We can have a water rate setting system.
Any questions on this slide? Okay, next slide, please. So then when you just look at the property tax rate for the slide I just showed you, this is for operations, your 22 cents, now we're down to 21 cents, so you can see that hasn't really changed in the past several years. We've just been holding steady. Next slide. So then look at sales tax. Just from 17 forward, we've more than tripled that. In 2020 is when the state changed the sales and use tax allocation laws, and now your sales and use tax is remitted to the delivery point instead of the sales point, and you can see that that was a huge game changer for Rhome. So any of us who buy something online and sourced to an address in Rome that's in the city get sales and use tax. And so that has changed. And you see here, sales and use tax for this year is $1.5 million. And that's what's focused for this. And because we're close to it already, and that's half of what we would have gotten back to the property tax reduction budget. Okay? How about we take a 5 or 10 minute break and at this for over an hour? How does that work?
This conference will now be recorded.
Back order is now 10:30.
So this slide is really like off the show property tax and allocate towards debt service. You can see that that has also trended down. But we currently I know there is a tremendous amount of social media, we are not yet, but we are working on and for the betterment of the city that we change those veterans. I'm very hopeful that some of these projects are actually coming under what we anticipated, and if that's the case, we will share that guidance with anyone, but that's fingers crossed. So hopefully this gives a good feel of what we've looked at over the past several years. So then we're going to move into you can see that this is just general fund overall. serve to provide service to the community. And in about 2 years, because we have staff that are being to provide services to the community, we have a local fire responsibilities that are involving as the community grows. This is not public work. This is operations based on parks, sports, development, all those things that show you. Next slide, please. Then when you lay these side by side, the revenue side and expenditure side, and you can see that those are coming from negative. They've not updated the 2024 numbers. Just for the first year, these are updated into improved. You can see that in every year that's listed up here, we need to come out and really close to it. But it can budget. And that's a good job. Not overstating what is already. Now, we're going to break this. Happy to answer any questions on your fund that we did not yet. As a result of some previous slides. Let's continue to another one slide. So looking at revenue and utility funds for about the past 8-9 years, we see that the revenue has including on 2020 years, pretty much has held steady years. And we'll see why. But there were some changes as it relates to the stewardship providing health. There were some concerns as related to changes in the streets that caused revenue generated. Revenue for most, there was one, but we do that year over year. So this is from like side by side. So this is so far, just on that after cost to credit organization have gone up. COVID has really been a struggle to provide the support and supply of the things to deal with exist. Let's think back to the numbers that are beginning. This is when you started that. So we have a system that's well seen. We also have a wastewater system that we've done back as early as 1965, 66, and started building some of them. So we've got equipment that was out in this next band. We are very fortunate that the community is putting a bunch of changes to that system. We're grateful for that. But you can tell that we have really changed post-COVID revenue and cost of waste. So this looks at we see this slide that we didn't have in the last presentation. We talked about the wastewater we have question earlier in the presentation of the Texas Blue Water Association. They are an entity that specializes in supporting small cities like ours and giving us support and additional services that often we don't have expert water we will be bringing. We're hoping the July meeting. What we're hoping to do, and we hope that CRWA person on it's a goal. You can tell the changes that we have built our base rate residential study. Many years ago, I actually calculated all of that and can certainly go through it. What you should see is upward significant revenue every year. shouldn't see a big jump when you go from 19 to 25, or 25 to 33, 30 to 37, 30 to 83 to 90. You need to be slowly increasing those every year to 2 so that you will shocking is exponentially larger from 1 year to another that doesn't allow them to budget for and doesn't allow us to capture all of the revenue. You see these lines in here that are just kind of steady. You've lost all of the revenue that would have come into that fund if you any business really runs work for this. We don't expect you to do the same thing year after year. We're going to fix that. See, enough about it. Everyone else who okay. So we did not look at this the last time around. We looked at it from the sewer standpoint, but this gives you an understanding of the base water rate and residential. And one of the things that we talked to you about is not only do we charge the base rate that is low for what our needs are within that fund, we also give our residents 2,000 gallons of water in that base rate. So the base rate is actually half of the street. We should be setting the base rate, and then we should be charging for every 1,000 gallons used. So, for instance, let's say that round numbers, this was $30 in the base rate. Because we're giving them the first 2,000 gallons included in that base rate, which is $8 a gallon that we are billing for, you cut your base rate about $15 for 2,000 gallons of water in the rate. Is it tracking me? So let me kind of see if I can show the different ways. If the base rate is $30, and also give us 2,000 gallons of water in that base rate, we should be charging them the $30 plus $8 plus $8 for this to be 46. So you're missing this. For every water a customer we have, not only residential but commercial, we gift 2,000 gallons of water in the base rate. We have a base rate, and then we should be charging for each 1,000 gallons. Yeah. So basically, make this about $15 in water. We've got to fix some of those issues because it is not allowing the utility fund, and I'll show you some slides as we go through this, it's not allowing the utility fund to fund its services. So we have, as I mentioned to you, we have a public works technician position open that pays between 20 to 22, $24 an hour, which we keep getting one to apply. And the ones we do get to apply for are not qualified. They're not qualified.
So is
So-
it because of the pay?
Some of it's because of the pay, some of it's because we're rural, and some folks don't necessarily want to travel. Some people bow out when they realize they do a drug test. The things that we do, they're using city assets, heavy equipment. They're driving a city truck. We have to be responsible for who we hire, and unfortunately, that excludes some folks who might. So we have some challenges in that area, but when you look at the base rate, this is for water, for residential and commercial. These are some things that you're going to hear from TRWA that we are going to have to look at. Next slide, please. So looking at commercial based water rate, we've held those rates steady a lot longer than we did the residential. So you'll see it was $26 here for 10 years, and then it went up to 38, which was a fairly large increase. And then it stayed there to 2016, and then it incrementally went up to 2022. In some years, like 2017, we increased it twice in 1 year because the decision was made, look, we don't want to fall off the cliff all at once. We're going to do one in February and one in November so that people can get adjusted. We also give 2,000 gallons of water in the basement.
So that $2,000 is abnormal.
2,000 gallons.
I mean, 2,000 gallons is abnormal, correct?
Not necessarily abnormal. There are other cities that do it, but it is not publicly required, is what the TRW is. Water's not free. And people make an assumption, especially if you do it with a well, and you think of everybody, I'm sure I have a well. I didn't think about my water bill. But it's not free. I still have to pay for the pump, I have to change the well, but I don't factor those into my daily costs.
And also, if everyone knows they're getting 2,000 gallons up front, that would not encourage conservation where it used to be for North Texas regions. Water's so critical.
And one of the things that we talked about at that regional mayor's meeting was if people would just stop watering their yards in Whites County, we wouldn't have problems. But because we make the assumption that we want to have an English tea garden out front of our house, I have been guilty of that myself in my house. That you spend the water, especially when you're drawing from the ground, that the aquifer is not going to support us, and we are going to run out of water. Questions? All right, so this is something else that we'll talk about with the folks from TRWA, that we need to adjust this and we need to look at the addicted water up to 2,000. So, next slide. So when you look at this in wastewater rate review, this is one that we talked about before, right? We held wastewater steady for 20 some odd years at $11. We lost all that revenue. Costs went up every single year. Personnel went up, needs went up. So what you ended up doing was your general fund subsidized your water. And we need to not be cross-subsidizing funds like that. Your utility fund is called a proprietary fund. It is meant to be business operated. It is meant to be self-supporting. General fund should not be transferring money to the utility fund from which to provide services that should be grateful. So we have a big gap here that we missed. Next slide, please. This is going to be the commercial piece. Same thing. You see, we did $15 for many, many years. Then they doubled it to $30, and then in order to deal with the issue, in the 2021 year, we went up to $78. And that's when the commercial folks got upset because that was a huge change in 1 year. If you're incrementally changing this, people have a chance to get used to it. They understand what you're doing. We've not managed this fund the best. So based on that, all of that revenue capture was lost. That's part of why we couldn't do anything on infrastructure because we didn't have it priced right in order to serve the community. That's why we have general fund now paying for bonds that should be coming in. Okay? All right, next slide, please. Now, this is fund performance. This is where it gets a little bleak. all those things that I originally just showed to you and where we've lost the revenue capture because we've not tended to the rates as we should have, we've got many years that that fund was in the red. And that's just looking at revenue and expenditures. And you can see in 2022, we had a healthy surplus because we changed sewer rates. But after COVID, costs went up exponentially, and it ate up any capacity that we had. And that has been a frustration for some of our residents because council originally approved about $5.5 million in bonds for the West Plant many years ago, 2021 timeframe. And we thought we'd be able to pay for it out of this sewer change, but it wasn't enough because we didn't deal with water. And then costs skyrocketed for everything that's mechanically related, and that capacity is no longer there. So people have been frustrated and said, look, council already authorized these bonds. You didn't issue them, so you should still have capacity in that fund from which to pay for it. That's a logical assumption. It's just the numbers been cleared out. And that's the challenge that we're going to here.
That was what frustrated me was I couldn't understand that either. Like we issued the 5 million and then we went back. We approved it and then we went back and raised water rates and could only approve $1 million.
Right.
It was I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Well, when I first came on, that was a question you and I discussed, and I went back and pulled many meeting minutes to recreate what happened so that I could get a handle on this analysis, because if I can't tell you, then you can't make the decisions that you need. And that's what happened. You had sewer rate increases, and you see that the fund was almost healthy. But because we didn't continue with what we needed to do, because costs went up so much, we couldn't keep up with them. The water chemicals, the testing costs have gone up so very much. Plus our well capacity has gone down. So we're not producing our own groundwater, which costs pennies on the dollars to produce versus what we're paying on the creek for water. And so we're not focused on this fund. That's what happened. Because to me, logically, it makes sense. Like residents would say, we authorized, why don't we still have that gap or that money in that fund to do that? And this is why. Next slide, please. So then looking at revenues versus expenditures, you can see a couple of years where it was in the black. You can see a couple of years where it was in the red. And all in all, it was mostly washed out. We don't have a whole bunch in reserve and utility fund. Next slide, please. This is the fund with depreciation. Kept pace with reinvesting in our system. So your rate itself should capture current costs. It should also capture the money to get back or be prepared to reinvest in the system and to capture funds for ongoing repairs and supplies, etc. Because we really only priced it at the bare bone minimums of paying for staff and day-to-day operations, and we didn't adjust the rate structure to deal with those other two issues that would come up, this fund has been in the red for many years when you factor in depreciation. Back in there was an auditor that was pretty new, came in and looked at this fund and kind of sounded the alarm of the issues that we're currently seeing. And I think that was in 2013, 14. So don't for me, I need to go back and look at my dates. But council made a change in rates, and they changed 3 times. Very small. Twice in 1 year and once in the following year in water rates. Not sewer, but water. And he brought to council that that fund was insolvent and had been insolvent for several years and was going to cause it to go defunct. Be a further drain on the city's resources because we were using general fund to supplement utility fund. And we've not really addressed it since then. We've made some changes, but we've not enough.
I went back old meetings of my board. Amy Moore did a presentation they were recommending the 30%,
Yeah.
as I recall. Or it's the city council or stuff like that.
It's hard.
When was this? Like a long time ago?
Yeah, it was like April, between April and June.
Oh, well, yeah, we couldn't because we had just raised wastewater rates so much and people were just up in arms. And so we're like, wait, you want us to raise water rates and then we're only getting $1 million? We can only afford $1 million bond. We can only do the minimum if we just raise it the minimum on the water rates when we had already just raised wastewater rates. It was frustrating because, yeah, you want to do it, but then, like, I mean, how much are they going to be able to pay?
You're 100% correct. The pinch point comes and the challenge comes when you hold it steady for so long. You're basically just waiting to deal with the issue many years in the future. And I've said to you all before, it's really easy to look back and find things. You don't know what they dealt with, and you don't know what was presented to them at that point in time. And so we, unfortunately, are given the task of figuring out a different path. And so that's hard work, really.
I think that's where we have to commit to smaller increases to 2%, 3%
Every
across
year,
the board every year, or at least the next 5 years, so we can evaluate it and see
And TRWA will walk you through that, and they've got a great spreadsheet that when you come to make a decision, say the higher one of the recommendations for this budget is another kind of they have created a spreadsheet where you can drop that in and it calculates the rate. What your base rate be, what your per rate be, and it makes it so simple. We had a rate study the last time, which is really good, is great. But he is in private business to do this, and it's expensive. That's why doing our rate study was right at for the only TRWA as part of our yeah, he was, Chris Eckert, he was great. And I've listened to him at TML at some conferences. He is a water expert extraordinaire. But if we can get something similar from TRWA and we can do some mindset education right now, we can leverage that membership and not pay this. But please, next slide, please. Okay, so this gives you the history of how we have invested in that water system since 1990 coming forward. This is not sufficient for a city our size or for a water system of our vast lines. We have 17 and a half miles of water. So this was a depiction that I put out in the budget last year just to give council an understanding of how we've reinvested and what that might look like. Now, of course, in 2024, it will look very different. And so we will see some of that investment in infrastructure. And just so you know, I've had a couple other folks call me that I've never talked to before about development. Let's say, hey, I heard that the community is doing this to invest, and there may be some sewer capacity. So as that tax base grows, you will see that burden on the tax base appear lower because you're going to have other taxpayers in the system. Next slide, please. All right, so looking at the capital, now we're kind of coming into the home stretch of this. So we are going to replace the west plant. That was approved by the voters. We are going to replace the clay tile lines, also approved at the last election, and we are going to look for at least 2, if not 3 water wells to help supplement our production. The nice thing about supplementing the production with water wells, we do want to be good stewards of the water that's in the ground, so we are going to work with groundwater conservation districts to determine the best location to do this in the best way possible. But as I mentioned, producing water from the ground is pennies on the dollar compared to what we pay to put on the field. So that should give us some additional capacity. The ground storage water tanks that are existing, we're going to have to talk about as part of this budget process. This is the second of the 2 component pieces that I brought you all. You know, the rusty tanks and the holes that I showed you. So that's going to have to be replaced. And that's either going to have to come the rate increases or another methodology. We don't have the capacity to pay for those. The lead and copper mandate is ongoing. Mr. Dominguez and his team continue to work on that. We'll still hit all of those deadlines. And then, as you know, that secondary water source, we are still looking for that at every turn. We are looking to see if there's another municipality that we can partner with, if there's another opportunity water district, if there's another water district we could potentially add from. And as you know, council authorized $10,000 for us to partner with our surrounding communities in White County to form our own water district. So that work continues as well. We did have an opportunity, Mayor Crenshaw and I, at the Wednesday's mayor's regional meeting. Do you want to speak to what they discussed?
We're having another with the steering committee meeting. I don't know if I'm still qualified to speak to this right now because I'm really trying to wrap my head around it. They're looking to go partner with opportunities.
So they're going to be.
Yeah, I'll let you talk to them.
City Administrator in New Fairview is going to. He is the touch point for helping draft the legislation. The steering committee has put out an RFP for attorneys to represent location information in this district, and I believe they've got 2 or 3 submissions back. So they're still going through that. Steps would be to draft the legislation. Mr. Hopper is aware that this is coming as the new elected state representative. We will also be talking to the unions about this issue and help get us some traction at the legislative level. When we have White County Days in Austin this session, we need to be there in representation. So that's something else that we need to make sure that we are part of the county central delegation down there for the representation of the city. If somebody on council wants to go and be a part of that, we can certainly do it, and I would highly suggest it because it will give us more talking point and opportunity with our legislators to determine why we need to form this district. We've also reached out to some of the surrounding districts of White County, Walnut Creek, to get letters of support with these letters saying they're going to pay the federation. So that's kind of the first step in how we move forward to surface water that we could access. They have had some recent conversations with Mr. Hopper has with some folks that it's called fossil planning another way, but may or may not be an opportunity. Now, mind you, the water district is a 30 to 50 year fix. But it is something that if you never started, it will never be available. So that's kind of where we are. But if that rate district built up was ever viable, then that's something that we can do.
Who else on the steering committee?
There is Mayor of Floyd and Anna and the city engineers and Fairview. Mr. Davis went listen to those meetings. Mr. Jock is going to go listen to those meetings. Mayor from Paradise is on there. We often have some representatives of the county. There's a business commissioner on there. Oh, cool. Cool is on there. We also have Mr. Shaw from the community groundwater conservation. It's a good representation. Okay. So that's the secondary water source. General fund, capital improvement things that we're going to have to talk about as we move through is facilities, general placement or rebuild. What you all may or may not remember is that this is up at City Hall this year. And we're going to have to determine what are we going to do. We've been in that building since 2017 and we've outgrown it. Doesn't mean we can't make it work. We certainly can, but I'm telling the council we're pretty cool in that area. We have the senior center rehab that $30,000 worth of ARPA funds were dedicated to that facility. We've not had any movement on that yet, mostly because we don't have the staff capacity to pull it off. We've been dealing with the treatment plants and spillover. I don't know if the $30,000 will still be a valid number. So council may consider what do they want to do with those funds. Do we want to continue to go that direction or we want to put it in something else? but these are things that we're going to have to talk about because we still have just a little bit of ARPA funds that need to be spent. Street repairs, we do have an inventory and a prioritization, but we don't have the funds from the rollback function to do anything on that particular issue. We have apparatus and replacement for the fire and EMS team that we're going to have to consider at some point. Both of our engines are past their span, and we are doing the best with them in operation, but that's something we're going to have to consider. Next slide, please. Future needs as far as administration is concerned. These are some things that I've talked about with staff. The upgrade to the website platform, you all have already approved that. It is very slow. It's a one-man band at the moment without a city secretary or finance support in the office, and I can't get to this project as we speak. Our new city secretary starts Monday. She has experience in redoing websites for her previous city, so I'm going to lean on her skills in this area. Looking forward to that. There's the concept of an electronic sign to help residents of city issues. When we talked about this the last time, we were going to use the city's new website to do electronic notices first. The council still wants to consider that plan. We can certainly do that. The electronic signs, I think, will be helpful, but it's general city cleanup. We still have complaints about dilapidated buildings, trash, junk vehicles around. This goes back to the idea of having someone do code enforcement. And we do have a potentially workable solution where we could utilize some of our current staff that is in a managerial role to serve as a code enforcement person. And then we could hire someone as utility billing clerk for less money than we would pay for a code enforcement person. So we could potentially hybrid this position, which would be helpful. I do know that the city of Aurora is interested in potentially partnering with us on this as well, up to approximately $20,000 a year, which would offset some of those costs. So that's something we should consider. The city-owned facilities, as I mentioned, is something that you all just need to keep on your radar. We are going to have to determine if we're going to continue to lease the current City Hall building at the rate that it will go up because each lease expires, the rates are adjusted. I have also done some research into the possibility of purchasing and or leasing a modular building that could sit out here in front of the other. That would allow us to all be close on the same campus. It would also give the fire chief and sort of what's record office space that we're really kind of good. We have office space, it's just not very usable at the moment. So if that was something that you wanted to consider, we may have one-time revenue coming in from Northwest Iowa School with the new Prairie View Elementary School. So they will be paying a building permit fee that we did not budget. There are no refunds for that if we don't use it for that one-time purpose. I never recommend one-time monies in because the next year we may not have it. So we would want to use that money for something. It could be built for the fire apparatus, it could go to the building, it could go to police cars, it could go to something that we want to do.
What's the timeline on the current lease, and then what's the timeline when you expect that?
It will all be within the next 5 to 6 months. They are requesting.
Keep this in mind as you guys decide what you want to do. We had to buy we had to lease that building because we didn't have nowhere else to go other than the tent. Okay, and long term, I would still like to see us rehab the old school and make that into our municipal complex, and we can get that done. And if this modular building would probably zero out the cost over time if we can use the one-time fund, ISD, get the building. What we're already paying in lease fees would help offset the cost of operation of that building right here. Plus, it's already big. And then if we can ever rehab the old school, move right in. I think it's a good idea, personally. We can't just keep it. That's money going down the drain. So just keep that in mind. You guys think about what you want to do.
Did you say this modular building, we would purchase it?
You can lease it or you
Lease
can
it.
purchase it, but if you purchase it, we can move it somewhere else. building with multiple sites we would move in and sit there very functional for an office setting. And it would give us the capacity to grow and continue to have space for be a one-stop shop. Office would be here, architecture would be here, court would be here, and it would allow the owner of the current facility to lease it out for something else. And if there's something else retail, then that generates sales and use tax to us as well. But that's something to consider. Right now, the cost of the building is about $250,000.
What size are you looking at? Are you talking about the size of a portable classroom? Like there's typically two classrooms?
It's a little bigger than that.
It's typically two classrooms, one building, two classrooms.
It's a 40 by 80.
In square footage, how different is that size compared to what City Hall
We're
is?
in 1,100 square feet.
I'm assuming there's also some separate costs.
Yeah, and yes, and currently the number I have is 220 for the building, and then there's setup costs, so I rounded it up. So it's just,
Keeping in mind the budget priorities that I tried to come up with, taking care of your people, number one. Trying to run a city at 1,100 square feet is kind of, not very attractive. So let's always keep in mind what the priorities for the budget are. I think that would go a long way and pay off dividends in the long run. Keep continuing to rent that building.
Did we find out how much Northwest was saving on the grading permit?
grading permit we're going to have to look at for October versus residential.
Didn't know what other cities would charge
Other
commercial for
cities
grading.
have reduced the rate of school districts because they're not close to my concern is I don't know what the formularies were that allowed them to arrive at that number, but we have police support, we have fire support, we have other things that still have to be done. And it will be a controversy. I don't have a number I can give you, but I would say it makes sense to reduce by this much or not, and the permitted living. It's about $375. The other thing that we would want to talk about is financial stewardship, what we talked about already, the 0.5% local sales tax and where it goes, so we can go to the next slide after that direction on that. Then public safety, and this comes to some of the discussions that I will need some direction from you all that we may want to spend a little bit of time on here as we have our working lunch in just a little bit. We have a very real need in dispatching, that we're going to have to make a decision which way council wants to go with dispatching services. Are we going to partner with the city fully and utilize local agreements with the city, or are we going to continue? When we went to the regional mayor's meeting, Michelle and I learned that the incoming sheriff was not intended to charge the county for so that's not going to be official. However, the system at the police department now for the sheriff is locally
So I saw that they upgraded their system. Maybe you can talk on that too.
So the two different areas that we could focus on is the infrastructure, which is your radio system, the ability to communicate back and forth, and that is much better than it was, but it's still not great. There are areas where we cannot transmit or communicate with dispatch or with each other. Recently, I was working a crash with one of my guys. I was on the lower end of 287 underneath the 114 flyover. He was at the top. I was trying to get him to understand. I was trying to stop traffic, but couldn't, and he was in a dangerous situation by having cars come through, and we couldn't communicate. So he caught on. We were able to rectify the situation, but the infrastructure is still not perfect. We continue to notify American Communications when we have trouble transmitting or receiving, and they are still working on it. I don't know how that's going. To that point, the Decatur Police Department, that if we were to end up going with their dispatch, they use Stoltz Communications, and according to them, if we were to go through that project that would be funded by Boyd, we would have no radio problems as far as communicating with each other and with the dispatch out of Boyd. The other part of this, and I'll tread lightly here because I don't want to create any animosity between the people we work with, but I will tell you that in 28 years of law enforcement, this is the worst I've seen as far as customer service and the ability to communicate and get our needs across and what is required to keep my officers safe. I've spent 3 years addressing issues that are never resolved. And I'm waiting until the new boss, the new sheriff brought in to see if it's going to change. I fully expect that sheriff to make changes, but I think it's going to take years to get this thing turned around.
So the question I would have for you then, Chief, is what would be your recommendation?
My recommendation, well, we work very closely with Boyd PD. When I first got here, one of my priorities, just looking at the way things were set up, they're a small department, we're a small department. Together, we're much better suited to help each other. I struggled with that with their former administration. They weren't really interested in working with us. But since Chief Schmidt has come along and been promoted to that position the last year and a half, we've developed a very good relationship. So we both agree. And our relationship goes not only with coverage, like we cover each other on major calls. If we need help, they come. If they need help, we go there. But we also share in training events to lower the cost. So it's really helped a lot. We've come a long way in that area of our policing and what we can do together, more so than alone. We both agree we need to stay together. Whatever we decide, we need to decide with them because we rely on each other. With that said, my personal opinion, if we can afford to, we should go with the Decatur dispatch.
Any questions from council?
I know that a couple of years ago, Sheriff Hayes originally brought this up. I kind of looked into, I've had some experience supporting dispatch systems, carrying alarm to service them. And so I was checking into different dispatch systems. At that time, I found there was one that had like a turnkey product that was web-based. However, they were out of California, but they weren't selling outside of California. So I don't know. I just bringing that up.
Well, dispatching includes 911 operators. We briefly discussed a combined dispatch service between Boyd and Rhome. You're talking $1 million right out the gate just to set the equipment up, and then you're talking at least 7 employees. It's a very high cost for what Decatur is offering. So Decatur, if you know, if you haven't seen, they're investing, I think it's up to $28 million on a state-of-the-art police department, and Chief Campbell is doing really impressive things up there. One of the things he's done is he's future planning, and what he's building is the infrastructure for a regional dispatch center where they could take on not only themselves, Decatur PD and Boyd and Rhome, but also Runaway Bay, Bridgeport, if they ever decided to get out of the dispatch, and also the sheriff. They're building this to be that kind of robust facility that can handle this. Because of their professionalism, their forward thinking, and their ability to invest in this, and knowing them as I do and the relationship we have with them, that's why I think it makes sense for us to go with them.
remaining half-cent sales tax for the county, I'm just wondering if that's an opportunity. The county would do it together, but something like that.
It's certainly a creative way to look at that, and one that I think ought to be explored. There are not just a whole lot of counties that do their sales tax sharing, but there are some. But it's that will be a Herculean effort to get the entire county to vote on this.
The idea being something that benefits the
Right.
county.
Right. Or if they put that money in the street, specifically dedicated for that, that might be something that people in the county would approve of. But it's just one of those things that I don't know how to answer for you all this time. So I believe the cost for that, Chief, do you recall what our buy-in was?
Dispatch charge from Decatur, I believe, is 45,000 a year. Boyd's would be a little lower than that, I believe. And while the sheriff-elect has said that they're not going to charge us, and I really appreciate that. They still hold that option.
Well, the charging wasn't the only issue that we were dealing with. It's the quality of service and having officers with no ability to contact them.
It absolutely is. And just so people understand what I'm talking about when I say there are issues. As an example, they had a major incident up north in the county, and there are two channels for police to dispatch from. And typically, when you have a major incident, you close one channel and leave the other channel open for the other agencies to continue to operate. They closed both channels and told Boyd and Rhome, if you need to work, then just use your telephone. Call us on the cell phone. And I wasn't involved at the time in trying to get it rectified. Chief Schmidt was, and basically he got no response. It was very diluted and dodging of why we didn't have a radio system that worked. And that's not the first time. That's not the only issue. We've had issues before of that. We get misinformation. We get no information. So the dispatch itself would be 45,000. The infrastructure, the buy-in is being covered by Boyd. So it's about $200,000 to put a repeater up on our water tower to allow us to interact and communicate. Boyd has offered to use unspent ARPA funds to cover that entire thing, as long as we would enter into a long-term agreement to allow them to put it on our water tower, which keeps my guys safe. And from the maps we've seen, we would have complete coverage on mobiles and portables. It looks like a really, I hate to use the word too often, but robust system that really gives us a lot of protection. Right now, my officers, when they're on the eastern edge of the county, when they follow somebody that far to make a traffic stop, they have to do what we call the Statue of Liberty, where they actually take their radio out of their holster and they hold it up as high as they can to try to get some sort of reception out on that. And it's outside our city, but still within our service area. And we could go on for a while. I'm not going to demean the people. I like the people that we work with, but I think we could do much better. And after 3 years of trying to help in that endeavor, I have made no inroads. I don't expect it to change.
Are we currently paying Wise County anything?
All the tax money that they get from property tax and sales tax. Yes, that would be a recurring fund. And there's a small fee that we would have to pay to reprogram our radios. Nominal, less than 20,000 one-time fee. So I think it's way less than that, but I don't want to undersell it.
The 45,000 we would be paying to Decatur, not Wise County, correct?
That's correct. That
Okay,
would
yeah.
go to the city of Decatur. And what that allows them to do is actually fund one more dispatch.
But to me, I would recommend council, if funding exists for this, that this be something that you all consider. That would be my recommendation.
That. I think it's a good idea. And until the county, now Sheriff Bellmer, I think he has every intention of trying. He's taking on a monumental task, and it's going to take a while to do. But in the meantime, we have to take care of business. I think this would be a good first step towards fixing the problem.
One thing, Ryan, just speaking with Boyd and seeing what they've been doing, top that they're up front in a lot of those costs anyway. I think it's great.
I agree. I think that, especially if the chief is saying, yeah, this looks like the best option, then I want to go with the subject matter experts that are going to keep their officers safe. And if that's the way to do it, then we need to do it that way.
Well, I will look for all those. My intention is to go through this list and then gain some feedback, what do you want me to pursue, what do you not, and then I will bring funding to you as we go along.
That was pretty urgent.
They're looking for an October 1. That's what Boyd's timeline is. They want to be on the Decatur system on October 1st, new fiscal year. Okay. The other thing that the police department has put forward, as we've discussed before, the fact that they do not have a CAD RMS system. In today's policing age, this is an anomaly and would be something that I would recommend to council that we figure out a way to invest in this. And then back to those conversations, right, about if we have one-time money, is this something that we want to use? So yes, we've discussed the building, but if we have one-time money either from sales and use tax over and above what we budgeted, or if we have a building fee permit, do we want to reallocate some of those funds for this investment? Because this is important. So, Chief, do you have a ballpark on what that was going to run us?
Yeah, CAD artists. So I want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. The computer-aided dispatching, where whoever we dispatch with can communicate via their in-car computer with the officer that's going to that call. Right now, we don't have that. I have gotten a quote from $75,000 to $125,000, and that would be over 5 years. You pay it up front, or you can spread it out. Obviously, it goes up a little bit incrementally if you spread it out. But we're still negotiating that with the company, because if we stay with the county, then we need to use their CAD system so they can communicate. And that's another issue that we have to decide fairly quickly. If we're going to stay with Boyd and then move to the Decatur dispatch, then we need to use CIS, which is what they use. I think the county uses Southern technology. I'm not sure, but we've been in talks with Mr. Rosser with CIS or ICS, I believe. But we haven't looked at theirs or demonstrated it yet. We just got some quotes.
I think we should pursue what Decatur's using.
Well, and also by the time the county finally gets its stuff together and the changes are implemented, why can't they do the switch to what everybody else is on instead of everybody switching to what they're on? So that's how I look at it.
Well, to that point, there are many CAD systems out there. Most cities are on different types. I know Denton County uses something different, and we don't know that the county would still be with what they're on now in a few years when they make changes.
I'm assuming Decatur's is a little bit more robust, as you say.
I don't like that word. I don't know why I used it. It is very professional. I haven't seen it. A lot of times, much like when I recruit officers, I ask my officers to go out and find somebody that you want to work with and that's going to be great for us. And so far, they've done a great job of that. I do that in a lot of areas. I find people that know what they're doing, and I follow them. I attach my car to their horse, and I win the race that way. I know Delvin Campbell is a very professional, fiscally responsible chief. And for him to tell me they love the system and the way they put it in their vehicles tells me all I need to know. Now, I'm not saying we won't do due diligence and make sure that we're not trying something new. We're not the guinea pig. We're not saying, hey, we're going to try this and see if it works. This is a professionally run law enforcement agency that relies on this system, and it is kind of neat. So right now we use Tough Books in our cars, which is fairly dated equipment, but we make it work. They don't use that. They use iPad, for lack of a better term. I think whatever that's called. And then there's tablet. There's a tablet in the front. Thank you. I'm not a technology guy. can obviously tell that. But then there's a small computer base that sits in the trunk that is already pre-programmed. And if they have a problem that something goes out with that, they drive to the station, they tell their IT officer, hey, this one's not working. They unplug it, they go to their locker, or they go to their storage, they pull a new one and they plug it in, and he's back in service. It's an incredibly efficient system, and it's much cheaper than Tufco's.
Is there a monthly or yearly fee associated with it?
Well, when you transfer to that system, we would use what we have now, but as we replaced cars, replaced equipment, we would update it with modern technology. And I don't know what that price is.
Okay. So the other thing that the police department has listed in their needs category is a police sergeant. And the cost on that is $80,000 to $85,000 a year plus benefits. So we can look at that for funding opportunities if that is something that council's interested in pursuing. In addition to that, we need additional officers on the street. And whether they're dedicated to motor and patrol, whether they're, however you want to configure that. I think Chief's recommending 2 officers potentially as motorbikes, or however we want to look at it. Chief, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So as far as an additional sergeant goes, that would be a patrol sergeant. You know, we have 2 sergeants now. One covers patrol, one covers CID. The patrol sergeant staggers his shift so that he can work with all 4 patrol officers, because there's 4 different patrol shifts. Because of that, if he's not here when an officer does a call and turns in his reports, or it needs correction, he may not see it for a few days. Then when he gets here and he makes those corrections and submits it back to the officer, then there's a couple more days before the officer gets it done and resubmits it. So you're talking about wasted time when you only have 1 sergeant who can do these things. And sometimes we can get the CID sergeant to fill in, but he's got a lot of work that he needs to do as well. So by adding a patrol sergeant that would not work opposite Sergeant Ritchie, you would have one here every day, short of vacations and holidays, time off. And so you wouldn't have the delay in getting cases filed and getting the paperwork done. But not only just that, I trust my officers. I give them a handgun and the authority to take somebody's constitutional rights away from them. I understand the seriousness of what we do, but there's still people, and people need leadership and direction, and we're not providing that like I think we could by having an additional sergeant, by having someone who's responsible on the street to oversee the activities that are being done. This does that. Now, this doesn't give us 24/7 leadership or supervision, I should say, but it does give us daily supervision that we are currently lacking. So officers, I had put 2 motor officers. Right now, you know, one of our biggest complaints from our residents is the traffic. And I will tell you, I came from a much larger city with a lot bigger police department, and I was responsible. I was the fatality crash investigator team lead for a dozen years, and we worked far more fatality crashes in this city than we did there. It's incredible because of the way the highways come through. And like Mr. Gann mentioned earlier, we may only have 2,000 residents, but we've got 40,000 cars going up and down our highways every single day. And we worked another fatality. If you read the paper, it was, you know, an elderly couple were killed on 287 just last week. The only way, in my experience, because we don't control these roads, we can't put stoplights in or put up stop signs or any of that. It's not up to us. So since we can't control that, the only thing we can control is trying to get people to slow down through heightened enforcement. The best way to do that is, as a former motor sergeant for 9 years, is to get motor officers out there, slowing them down by making stops, writing citations, and being a much more visible presence. That if you come through the city of Rome, you better mind your speed, because this isn't This isn't because we're trying to raise revenue or write a bunch of tickets or anything like that. Most officers this day and age don't even like writing tickets. It's the only reason we do it is to save lives and safeguard property. And I will point to the intersection of 287 and southbound 287 at the 114 overpass right here next to BC Rome. We had 13 crashes in a month because of the closed highway, the closed bridge. We implored TxDOT to put up a stop sign. They did. Miss Chang said, "Okay, we'll do it," and immediately told everybody, "This is Rome doing this, not us." And I went on Facebook and said, "You're gosh darn right, it's us, and here's why." And in the several weeks, I think it's been 3 weeks now that those stop signs have been there, we haven't worked a single crash. I've heard that there was one and they just exchanged information and moved on. But we went from 13 crashes to none. And just by changing the configuration of the roadway. It's very inconvenient. I get that. Read my Facebook post. It's very inconvenient. I understand that. But if you can get up 15 minutes early to get to work and that keeps people from getting hurt or killed, I'm okay with that. And just for the record, we haven't, to my knowledge, not that I've seen, we haven't written any citations for running those stop signs. We've educated some people that haven't stopped, but these weren't done in that vein either. So as far as the two officers go, my plan was to, if we had the money to put them on, because this is similar to what y'all were saying with the money from Northwest ISD. It's an ongoing money issue as far as funding, but motor officers like Councilmember Shoemate can tell you, they pay for themselves through enforcement. I wouldn't ask them to answer calls unless it was an emergency covered call to provide officer safety for the patrolmen. And I would have them here during the week when we have the most cars out, working the highways and working the school zones where we have crashes and we want to protect lives. I would not use them as fill-ins on weekends or night shift or anything like that. I would almost keep them separate so they can continue to do the important work of crash response and traffic enforcement to help make it much safer for our residents and those passing through. Now down the road, sure, I can use more officers. It scares me to death that I've got an officer working in the middle of the night by himself, and I don't know how long it's going to take his cover to get there. I don't like that. It's just, but I understand that's what we have. By adding that sergeant, that also helps with that because we would have at least two here until 1 in the morning because the sergeants work 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. so they can cover the day shift and the night shift. They can spend time with all the officers that they're supervising and leading. So at least through the major part of the night, we would have officers that can cover each other until such time we can hire more officers that we would put on.
Casey, I think at one time you were telling me something about a commercial, some kind of special term you liked to regulate commercial traffic. Yes. What was it?
That's commercial motor vehicle enforcement. We would have to push the legislature to make our seat fit the specific part of that legislation so we could so people the last I checked on it, that there is a grant or the state system where they will fund a vehicle, your weight scales on that, training. But we, as a city, have to meet that qualification that's for the state. So,
That's something kind of an aside, but something that we might get to, which would be another revenue generator and also help with safety. But
If we're going to pursue that, we need to do it now because the legislative session is coming in. Otherwise, it'll be 2 more years. But we have an inordinate amount that comes through here, inordinate, and it's just off the charts. And if there was some enforcement,
let's say motors, I guess I'm biased with the amount of change in driving behavior is our ultimate. And so when we have bad accident areas, especially Rhome, we saturate those areas with 2 to 3 motors. I can tell you firsthand, our accidents go down to nothing, especially like 114 through 77. We hammered those areas per se. We weren't out specifically writing tickets, but we were very well scene out there, so all those normal drivers are going through. They're like, oh, that motor's probably sitting over here. So we really bring those accident numbers down by people changing their driving behavior. And motors on the other side of it, it also goes into a crime aspect. If we have a crime heavy area, you saturate those motors over there, all those individuals are sitting there get pulled over, so now they turn into pedestrian traffic, and then definitely if they're going to want to move. So you kind of filter out a lot of crime that the motors do.
I wanted to ask you more about that commercial motor vehicle enforcement. Does Rome, is there an ability for Rome to do that?
We don't meet the qualifications, like Mr. Schmick said. We could ask for a carve out. I think if we had motors, because yeah, these trucks may be overweight, but that's not my concern right now. My concern is the way they're driving, and you don't need a commercial motor vehicle enforcement officer to affect the way they're driving. Motor officers can do that, and they can do a lot more than that. Like he said, high visibility is a big thing, and when you see a motor officer, when you pass through and they're there often, you stop. If you're in the habit of speeding, you will change the way you're doing things because you know they're there. I like the idea of commercial motor vehicle. I did that in my former city. I put together a proposal to do that. I wrote ordinances. I used scales, did all that. While that may down the road be a great thing, I think the motor officer idea would cover most of that before we went down that other road.
I'm not thinking one or the other. I'm thinking both. If we need a legislative session coming up to kind of start with that, but I'm all for.
I had a slightly different idea on commercial vehicles. Is there anything out there that sound device that can detect a jailbreak, for instance? And, yeah, I know that. But the reason I'm asking is, if there was that type of device where it detects the jailbreak, takes a photograph, and then you get commercial fines on that. That seems like that's kind of automated, and I don't know.
It sounds like a great system. I've never heard of that, but I do know that Texas has outlawed red light cameras, so I would think they would probably find those either unconstitutional or at least not desired here in our state. If we hear a jailbreak, we can certainly take enforcement action on it. Engine brake.
Hear them on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was out with a truck parked in the fire lane at Love's yesterday, and I guess one of his fellow truck driver friends didn't like it, so he, even right there on Freedom Parkway, he hit his jake brake, however it works, and it was very, very, obnoxious while I was standing there. Had I been able to clear and go right him for that, I would have, but I was too busy already on that stuff, and he knew that, and that's why he did it. So I get it. They know it's a thing.
One last question I have is, during our discussion about that half-cent sales and use tax diversion, or whatever we want to use it for, that's another funding stream to help pay for some of this. If we created that
Crime control district.
crime control district, that would be another funding stream.
Yes, and then once you make the initial investment of the vehicles for the motor officers and hiring them in, I would encourage us to set the pay scale where we could bring in motor officers that are already qualified. I'm a motor instructor. If we needed to, we could do a school, but if we brought them in already certified, if we set their salary at a competitive wage, so we could do that. Once you've made that initial investment, their citation revenue basically funds them.
At least to a good extent, depending upon how they come out. It also, as to Mr. Shoemaker's statement, it changes everyone's behavior in town.
And of course,
just how much budget neutral owners are. That they not only fix themselves there, but it's just the accident reduction that you see where you're freeing up patrol guys now when they can do other stuff. It's, motors are huge positive impact.
Any further discussion on that?
Hello. You could also probably ride them for exhaust tampering because if they haven't tampered with the exhaust, they're not loud. They're loud because they don't have mufflers. So that's another fine you can probably get a little cost. I really hate giving secrets away, but that is it.
Okay, let's take a 5 or 10 minute break and get your lunches and come back, and then we'll move into some fire conversation and then round that out, and then we'll talk about utility fund.
This conference will now be recorded.
Start us back up. All right, so coming back from our short break, we wanted to move into future needs as it relates to public safety and talking about firefighters. Chief Estes, can you elaborate on the need for one more position filled, which is 3 bodies? Yes, sir.
So as Chief Davis said earlier about the one person at night, we cover 54 square miles, so we're out in the county. We go out down Hickory down to the county line, also to New Fairview. We go out to Aspen, we go to Eagle Mountain on mutual aid calls. And one person, Bill and I, walking 100 yards up to a really terrible looking shack with one person leaving on a medical call constantly. We thought about maybe trying to do a seal carry because they have a deal out now with first responders and firefighters. I'm not in favor of that right now. So, for other reasons, not because I don't like concealed carry on carry, just for other reasons. That's not going to happen. We need more people, even out on the roadway wrecks. I want him to get more police officers so we'll have more eyes on the road, but I need more firefighters so we can have eyes on what we're doing. Just my set of eyes or one set of firefighters' eyes doing extrication
it's not safe at all. NFPA standards state that we need 4 people on the fire truck. And we just need 2 right now for the truck. I've got a guy starting February or June 15th, our weekend firefighter shelter, which I greatly appreciate. They work 96 hours, so hopefully that will turn into regular shift work. Firefighters on the firefighter schedule, the way we work or when they work is 120, 120, 96. So for 3 different pay periods. So one pay period you get 120 hours, 196 hours. So if they're below 106 hours, then you're going to have to pay heavily. Getting off a little cheaper with just a 96 weekend. It's not going to be so much full-time firefighter. Then if we had 2 more firefighters, they do 1 per shift. And we're fortunate enough to have one of our volunteers that we got through our academy, which they all pass their GCFP course. Now all they got to do is take their state test and become certified for the work. Any firefighter, any fire department in Texas, that's a good company. So we have a pool to choose from, hopefully, out of these people. Keep them in on when they get trained. Because they're already trained, steer them in the right direction. Eventually, get some supervision, like he was talking about. His sergeant is equivalent to like my drivers, or the drivers need to attend. Michelle and myself can always be there on the weekends. If we send the truck out to Haslett or because we also carry part of Tarrant County. We also get county money from Tarrant County. I think that's $8,000 is what we get from them. We run about 60% of our calls in the county, 40%. Sometimes it's even more outside. We definitely need more hands on deck. Just main reason is just safety. Matt asked me what I needed for budget. The mayor asked me, and I go, "We need people." That's what I need. So if I don't have people, I don't need apparatus. I don't need the station. We'll make do with it. We do need to do a little bit of improvement. If we ever do get the city hall up front and move an office there, that office will become another dorm room. We're not equipped in no way, shape, or fashion. This was Texas, but we do not hire a female right now. Just we have to give her privacy.
How many active volunteer firefighters do you have?
Well, with Brett going full time not this week, next week, we had 7 hours.
And they're all pretty active? Oh, okay.
A lot of them don't like weekends because they're young kids. Don't like the weekends. So weekend coverage, weekend firefighters. Today, 45 myself. Like yesterday, had one. Kid's 18 years old. It's hard to train somebody when she's cheaper. That's also we don't get the quality of training at the station. Firefighters do a lot of training. We do a lot of training in the building, which we kind of rearrange some stuff to train safety. Like I said, summer one is safety.
So we'll price this for council and we'll also make decisions once we get numbers together. We're not quite there yet for a decision, but these will be the recommendations that staff have for you. The other one that as it relates to personnel would be funding that code enforcement officer position. That would go a long way for a variety of topics. We have a need in Rome to provide that service.
Scott, you say 60% of fire calls are outside the city. Pretty close. So, what percentage of funding comes from outside the city?
This one.
what percentage. You know,
Yeah, it's,
it's ideally 60%
no,
funding.
it's not even.
I just wanted to. I guess I'm just going back to comments. A question that I wrote down at the beginning of this meeting is how can we shift the bird to the daytime population or to that population that we serve outside of the city? And I'm just bringing that up as a general comment.
Can we renegotiate those contracts with the counties? Oh, they're just like, oh, well, here you go.
If you make this many calls, then you'll get this much money. Well, some of the people that make 20 calls a year, less than that. People that make 85 to 100 calls a month, like, like we do, it's like, well, that's not going to work because we're not going to know.
Didn't we talk at one time that now you're charging people who live outside the city?
Well,
Oh, for Rex.
well, for Rex we do, and they're not paying off like they used to, and I'm out to think that they're about to do out there. South Carolina. So they're just, the insurance has gone up. So,
Is that the cost recovery? Oh, we haven't got anything from them this year.
it's just gone up so much. We've got like 12 pending right now. They're not even budgeting on nothing. Just getting started.
What is the per call cost?
I've never broken down per, like, it's now getting 5 people, so I will do that. I will figure out what the cost for it. For our, we've got it in our system where I think I can pull that out of there. But typically, just right.
So is this something you could possibly charge back to the auto insurance?
What happens on a cost recovery is that we turn in our report. We have to have their VIN number, their insurance company, and all that stuff. So the insurance company reimburses us for our time, but it's charged to through the insurance company to hold it up. Now we don't do anybody within the city limits, but we do outside the city.
So the individual that was driving the car gets charged, not the insurance.
No, well, the insurance gets charged, yes, because the individual gets a higher rate on it. It's like filing several claims.
But the insurance company is there to insure, so it should be paying y'all also.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we get it through cost recovery. I'm not 100% virgin on that. It's all through cost recovery, which goes after the insurance.
So they're a third-party contractor, and they assist us in getting reimbursed from the insurance companies themselves because staff doesn't have the expertise for that.
So if they're going under, have we paid them money to do this? No. No?
We don't pay them. They send us the revenue, and I don't know how this works. It was in place before I got here. If they take a percentage of what the collections are, I don't know.
Like they're about to go up on their rates.
Maybe they're just pocketing all of this.
Well, that's the question, because when I was running the numbers for budget to see where we were this year, I noticed that we hadn't received any money in that line item. So that's something Chief Estes and I are going to have to pursue and figure out what are our alternatives, because that doesn't work.
New Fairview, the chief over there, they're doing it construction. Oh, it looks like
So he turned in a bunch of it. And they seem to think they're about to go.
So could you speak to this item on here about the generator for the fire department and what that need is?
The generator, I looked it up on there, was asking about it. It's a 30 kilowatt, or 30,000 kilowatt, and it's going to be between $12,000 and $18,000. What they'll do is keep our computers running, our doors, you know, will go up. It's actually kind of like you see it at home. It's
Like a Generac?
yeah, it's like a Generac. You see it outside home. Yeah, it's quite a bit bigger. We have to run everything over here. AC, lights, radio. It'll take a little bit more. Plus, if we ever do move something, it's not so much.
So the other item that's on here about emergency management planning in coordination with the county, that's ongoing.
That's just, it's every year.
And Chief Deebus, you have on here handheld ticket writers and body cameras. Body cameras we've discussed before. Would you speak to the handheld ticket writers and what our thoughts are there? There you go.
Okay, so that would be in conjunction with our CAD and RMS. Right now, citations are written through TopSync or on paper. If I go out and do traffic enforcement, I use paper tickets. Yes. I know it's like 1980, but it works. And then our motor officer, obviously we don't have a computer on his bike, so he writes handheld citations. One of the problems with that is he writes his handheld, he writes paper tickets. He brings them back to the station, and then the admin assistant has to enter them all into CopSync so it can download to the court. It's kind of an inefficient system we have. But if we do end up going with Decatur Dispatch or if we go with their CAD and RMS system, they normally tandem that with a ticket writing system. I know the one through ICS is called DigiTicket. We're already downloaded into our court. We would just have to pay for the ticket writers themselves. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't have the quote in front of me, that at 75 to 125, I think it was 75 if we don't have ticket writers. It's 125 if they do provide them. But don't quote me. I can hard numbers. If y'all say yes, let's move in this direction, I can get hard numbers and work with our partnering agencies to make sure that we have it all down.
So what I'd like to see us do is research that between now and the next budget presentation, and then we'll bring that when we know how much revenue and expenditures we're dealing with. And then they can make a decision from there once we know what resources are there.
Sure. And to the body camera system, again, we are going to have to move to something in a year or two. The WatchGuard system we're on now, which we have a lot of problems with, was purchased, I think, 3.5 years ago, and it hasn't worked well in over a year, and we were due to replace them next year anyway. So that's something that sooner rather than later we will have to do.
Questions on those items? Okay, Chief, if you will swap spots with Mr. Dominguez, we're going to jump over to utility fund. So looking at that and in talking with Mr. Dominguez about the things that they need, the first thing that you see listed on your slide deck is the generators for the water plants or for the pump stations. Those are required by TCEQ, so we are going to have to fund those in some form or fashion. It's not an option at this point. The other thing I need to inform you of is we did receive a enforcement notification for settlement for our latest village at the West Plant. I don't have a number yet as to what that looks like. They've asked us to submit the costs for remediation that we've already paid, so that may reduce the fine that we received, but it's likely that we will be paying something to TCEQ as well for the recent overflows. The repair and replacement of the ground storage water tanks for the GSTs, those we talked about on a previous slide that we are going to have to deal with in the utility fund this year. They need an additional staff member in Public Works as a technician. We'd like to fill the one we have, which we haven't done yet, but we'd like to hire a second that could be of support. I'll let Mr. Dominguez speak to these next ones as it relates to the equipment purchases.
Thank you. So on the equipment, the Vector unit, the big truck we own for cleaning sewer lines and digging holes with water hydro excavation. This last 3 weeks, I rented a trailer mounted hydro excavator to use for the leading copper to identify all the meters and what materials are used for each line. The reason is if I was to use the Vector during those 3 weeks for 8 hours a day, I know for a fact that truck would not hold, and the maintenance on it would have probably been a whole new, who knows, $20,000 because the Vector itself, the part that sucks up the debris, is weak, and I know that's not cheap by far. And then the water pressure pump by itself is not cheap. We replaced it in the past when they first bought the machine, and so that'll need replacing before or while it's worth something. We had gotten a quote for a $30,000 trade-in from a company if we buy both the trailer mounted jetter and the hydro excavator. And honestly, I would rather preserve that vehicle so we can trade it in for anything. And for streets, the alligator and down the roads, if you go down certain roads, not the cracks, but the ones that look like spider webs, those areas of the road are in desperate need of repair. And we would have to have a hot box machine, which holds hot asphalt from the plant to the location. We cut it out, we fix the foundation, put new base, and we put the asphalt on top. And it buys us time. It buys the road time, so it doesn't completely just give away. And the crack seal machine. You want to seal all the cracks down the roads if we're not anticipating paving over them or doing chip and seal or something. We gotta have equipment to get on these roads before they get away from us.
Now, this is a double-edged sword because it's not only do we need the equipment, but we don't have the staff to do it as well. So a lot of those would have to go hand in hand with us not being able to fill and not having filled our technician spot. Our plant operators are doing a lot of maintenance work, and so we're stamping out fires all over town as best we can. But you'll probably notice that none of our entryway signs have been maintained, and some of the other areas are kind of going as quickly as they can get them because they're dealing with overflow and just the normal day-to-day maintenance. So that's something that I would say we need to consider as we move forward. There's not a lot of money in the budget for this. There is some money in for street repairs. I believe we budget about $120,000 each year. Some of that is going to need to be spent on some new signage. I would recommend to council that we look at getting some signage that talks about soliciting in the city, and that a permit is required, and that needs to be placed in strategic locations. I think there's juvenile curfew signs that we need to remove because that's no longer enforceable, so we need to do some general cleanup in that regard. We could post some signs about Jake brakes, which, while it may not stop at all, it's something that we could consider. So some of the money needs to be spent, but we may have $75,000 in that account that could be used for some of this purchase.
I thought we approved the Jake brake signage.
I don't think it's posted very well.
Oh, okay.
There is some on the, coming from the big entrances, 34, 33, 287, 114. When Sean was here, they put those out.
And I'm not sure. They were talking about roads that, remember the roads that were just done in 2020? I haven't seen them.
They're bad. They're real bad. The reason is I guess when they first laid the roads prior to, the foundation's just not good. That's what the problem is. And you can go down there and you can see sinkholes and alligatoring everywhere.
Well, they're
doesn't
not
matter
perfect
what
gutter.
road
They're
you
not
take.
concrete, and they're
Yeah.
not designed to last that long.
Well, they were done in 4 years.
Yeah.
But we're not
They should be.
maintaining it. If you're not filling those cracks, if you're not doing those issues, then it's because of that.
I feel like that's really bad. If it's only lasting 4 years.
You're only fixing the surface. You've got to fix your subgrade before you do anything. Even if you put concrete on it, concrete will hold for a while before it starts cracking. If the road underneath it is not good. Your subgrade has to be good for your road.
So is there any, I guess the contractors, we approved that post street, so
Wasn't that done in conjunction with the county?
N- Yes and no. There was, I don't know if y'all recall the issue of the county going in and sweeping all the top off of the roads when Sean was here. Now the county was going to chip and seal Alliance and some of the side roads. They're supposed to stop on Speedway halfway. Well, they went ahead and just swept the whole subdivision, and they took off a good portion of everything. But that's on top of that, though. This, like Mr. Johnson said, this the sub foundation. It's that's where the problem occurred. I don't think it was. I don't think the contractor did a good job of actually putting a very good sub foundation. And that was, I want to say that was before Sean was here. Maybe it was because I was here and the road was here. I can't recall if Sean was here or not at the time, but yeah.
Just to be clear, this is small growing pains of a small community. This is not abnormal. We just need to get a comprehensive road plan in place with rotation and repairs, and that will help us deal with some of these issues. But this is part of us maturing. And if, right now, we don't have the resources to dedicate to it to where we look the way that we might want to look or not have a complaint from residents. Chip seal is never a resident's first choice. They don't like it because it spits stuff up and it's loud and noisy and it's not as nice probably as what they had before, but it's really about all we can afford at the moment. Morris is another street that's just completely crumbled. We have several I showed you during our CIP presentation earlier, and these are things that we want to look at, but we don't currently have the funding to deal with that. I know someone put on social media that they wished we had added streets to our bond package. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, that's a wonderful idea, but we don't have the capacity to fix it at the moment.
well,
And
we did do streets for a bond package and it got voted down.
either way, that was just some feedback that I'd heard. And we as a community have to understand that we're still small and growing, and this is part of those growing pains, and we have to prioritize and address. We don't have the capacity to do it all. And I don't think our residents would like that much approval at once. So we're making great progress, and we're chipping away at things a little bit at a time. And that's what you all do as the governing board, is giving us direction. So we'll look into it, but chip seal's never, to Mr. Johnson's point, it's a Band-Aid on the road.
When they chip sealed the roads in Ellis, I thought there was going to be a mass riot and an upheaval. I mean, it was. I hope we never see that ever again.
So if our real solution is to fix the road base, what additional equipment needs to be on this list? And in order for us to be able to have that capability,
You have to have like 8 employees, a road layer. Yeah, there's a grader. It's not within. Yeah, it's yeah. It'd be a lot.
But when you think of it, that's part of the reason why Boyd's has a larger public works as well. And I know we do a lot of what are our surrounding communities doing, because you want to learn from what they've done and what's worked well and what didn't and what can we avoid potentially. But they don't have the staffing to deal with their roads. And so we contract out the big stuff and then we Band-Aid the small things. And this is part of the Band-Aid process.
okay, as part of fixing the clay tile situation, is that an opportunity to tie in repairing some streets?
The roads that cross, or the sewer lines that cross roads. I mean, there's going to be a whatever size line. If it's an 8-inch line, probably a 12-inch hole or whatever, because that'll be OSHA requirements under the contractor. So they will have to redo some parts of the road. But I mean, I'm talking, yes, slim to none.
Generally, when you redo roads, you add trails or sidewalks next to them, because you're already in the area and you would install those in tandem, but you're not there
But that's an exciting.
yet. Wouldn't that be great to be able to have a lot of walkability about town, even just to the park? So it is a goal for us to shoot for. We're just not quite ready for that yet.
Communicating that goal again goes a long way.
Well, and that's setting the vision, which
Right,
you all worked on
right.
here the last time. Matter of fact, on your agenda for next week will be a resolution to approve the vision and the mission statement, so I can start using it and getting it out on everything that we're doing, because that's part of the work that you all are setting the foundation from which we're successful for in the future. And that, I really take my hats off to you. You guys are doing the yeoman's work of getting Rome ready and dealing with all the growth pains.
I grew up in a town. It's over 170, population of about 30,000. But I always check in what's going on in the city, and it's amazing how they've got the same issues that we have. They've been there 170 years.
Okay, so then looking at stock replacement parts for the water and sewer emergencies, Mr. Dominguez, can you speak to that as well?
Yes, these were the parts we talked about for overnight issues where we have to drive all the way to Fort Worth or Dallas or wherever parts are at the time of such emergency. And as of the moment, we don't have anything. We just, what we need, whether it's a new service line, a new tap, a main break that somebody caused or naturally happens, we have to grab a trailer and go where we got to go to get the parts. It's inefficient. Last time we were ready, we had dug up the hole. It was a leak on Russell Street, and we had the hole dug up in an hour. We're ready for the parts. It took 3.5 hours, 4 hours to get the part here. As soon as it was here, it took 5 minutes to put in. It's just, we're not efficient with what we have, and having parts on hand is just a different game. And other cities do offer to help when this situation comes, but everybody has different size lines. So it would help if we had parts, so at least when something happens to them, we have something to offer. Because they're like, what do you have? I'm like, well, I really can't offer anything because we don't have anything. I can drive to the store. I mean, that's, it give me 4 or 5 hours, but that's.
Yeah, the supplier for these parts. Um, would there be possibility of having an arrangement where they can keep their inventory here in the public works, and then we pay for it as we draw it out of that inventory? In other words, they actually put their inventory in place with their ownership of it, and then we purchase as we need.
I have never seen anything like that, but I'm not saying it does or doesn't exist.
It exists in manufacturing, private manufacturing. Trust me.
I don't doubt you whatsoever. I think our problem's going to be storage capacity as well. We're going to have to do a whole bunch of clean out of the current facility. There's a lot of parts back there that are defunct that people just kept and thought, well, we might need it. And I don't disagree that we might need it, but by the time it can be put into use, it's now obsolete or it's cracked within there. So they're going to have to clean out a lot of stuff just to get ready.
If anybody hasn't been back to his little shop back there and see where he's got to work, you'd understand because there's no room for anything.
But that's my concern with purchasing additional. So I guess it depends on what kind of parts, right? And I will say, this is being recorded. I am married to Sanford. Okay, Coach he saves everything. Or we have an additional one of those just in case. Like it was all I could do to let them haul off the old washing machine last weekend. So I'm concerned that we buy additional parts, but then they're not going to be exactly what we need. It's not going to fix it. And we've spent money on something that 10 years from now we're going to be asking somebody to take away from us. So, I understand.
This is not a lot of money. This is just some generally used parts.
Yes.
And Mr. Dominguez,
I'm not gonna order any special type. These are just general use, 6-inch pipe, 8-inch, 10-inch, the big stuff. When there's a big main break, and the parts would be stored in the building. That's the issue. Is they bought valves, they bought dressers, and they just put them outside. Well, what does sun do to anything? It corrodes it. The pipe, it weakens it because it's the plastic, I guess. It just doesn't hold like that. And the rubber, the seals, they all crack. If they would have just put it in the building, we would have been okay.
We would have certainly been better off. I mean, the building's not heated and cooled, but we would have been better off than we were with it just sitting on the back porch.
So at some point, we're going to come back and have like a price for all of this stuff. Okay.
All right, and the last one there, Mr. Dominguez?
The entrance to the Bobo site. So, as y'all know, I don't know if any of y'all been down Bobo County Road 4668 between Boyd and Newark. It is a very high traffic road now. Everybody cuts off because of the traffic building in Boyd. They'll cut off through 718 going towards Newark, and then they'll divert to 730, and that's the county road they do it on. Our entrance, we can't fit our truck in the entrance. The gate is right on the road almost. And when we have a trailer to go mow or a trailer to go do something, we do not fit. So my guys park on the side of the road and nobody slows down. I've almost been hit multiple times, and I think it needs to be addressed as a safety issue where we need to expand the road into where they can park into the property and then open the gate. And there's plenty of room there for it. And it's just something that I brought up because before something happens, things do happen, and I think it can be avoided.
So, as far as utility fund is concerned, those are some of the big items that have surfaced. Some of these we've talked about before. To Mrs. Ty's point, we will put numbers to all of this, and we will bring it back at future discussions. If you'll go to the next slide, please, sir. One of the things that
To your entrance, what type of entrance you have now? Base, asphalt?
It's just a culvert and some road base.
mostly it's grass.
Yeah, it's
So
mainly a culvert. But we need a 40-foot entrance so the trailer can turn because we're right off the road. We don't
Have you
have
ever seen where anybody that owns cattle has a gate going to their property where they V it in?
That's what we need.
If you got a 30-foot gooseneck trailer, you got to pull in to be able to get off the road, then open the gate. That's kind of what you
that's what I was going to suggest. I was just don't know how big the entrance was. I've been by there, I don't know how many times. I don't ever pay attention to it. It's not where I'm going.
I wouldn't have thought of it either until we were out there one day, and I thought, wow, okay, this is not much different than I called Chief Davis, and I said, listen, what do we think about these crossovers down here on 287? I watched a person in a truck pulling an extremely long trailer pull out of kind of the east side into the median, and there was a service truck here and another car coming up behind. You didn't see it, and he let the gun sticking out so much on the trailer. I thought, sure, those people were about to get decapitated. And instead, they swerved over in front of this truck, and that guy with the trailer pulled into oncoming traffic coming south to try and not have the person behind him hit him. That was a mess. That's a mess. And I don't know what the options are. We talked about it, and he has a very learned opinion on the whole thing, but it's a mess, and it does not do it justice until you've seen something about it.
Well, I seen a motorcycle T-bone a car because he was on the inside lane. 18-wheeler was on the outside lane. The car didn't see the motorcycle. He was out there, motorcycle,
Right.
car. I loved it when it was under construction.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that again.
It's an extremely hazardous area.
But you've tried to address this with TxDOT. They don't. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I've heard this, and it's just on social media because so we know everything is true. But I've heard that there are county people that are stopping TxDOT from making those changes, like stopping that process.
Not that I've heard of. When I went to a TxDOT meeting, what I witnessed was they had not really considered where the traffic would go if they shut down those crossings. So I think until they have an understanding of where will it flow to and do those roads have capacity, they don't seem to be making any change. If you'll recall, what was it, shortly before Thanksgiving last year that I went to a meeting. Scott, you were with me at that one. I think because you were out of town actually. And they were talking about wanting to close those crossovers down before Thanksgiving and Christmas because they knew there would be more fatalities there. But that's the very last I heard.
Who controls that service road? Is that TechStop?
So those are all things that we've heard discussed, and this was a meeting in the regional office in Decatur. And Judge Clark was there, Scott and I were there. Yeah, it was a full house. I don't recall everyone who was there, but Northwest ISD had some representatives there, and they were talking about the school buses not being allowed to cross, etc. But I just don't think it's come to its time, and I don't know if that's just a capacity issue with TxDOT, and maybe they've not had a chance to look at it. But just like we've discussed, until you see it with your own eyes, it does not come home to you. And I mean that shook me up to watch that, because you could see the panic on the person cutting across, and you could see the panic on the person about to hit. And it's not feasible for it to continue, but we have very little to no control over it other than enforcement.
How long ago was that?
It was last fall.
It's like they said, if they would redo that old highway, service road, whatever you want to call it, after they get this bridge finished, and then they can come up here and turn around, they can set those crossings off.
They could. You're correct. It's interesting. I wonder if they knew that bridge was coming to be shut down before when we talked about it then, because we didn't get. I don't know. It's interesting. All right. So looking at a potential priority list, when Mayor Crenshaw, you want to address this that we talked about?
Yeah, but again, the priorities for the budget that I think are important for people. We got to keep the good people we already have and take care of people. We need to address our infrastructure. Uh, Rome's infrastructure is pretty much as low as it can be. We need our water, sewer, the infrastructure. We got to take care of our infrastructure because that's what's going to bring more tax-paying people into town. And then our facilities. We got to have places for people to work, places to keep parts. I can see Public Works getting a maintenance bay and a small shop or warehouse to keep their stuff and take care of the things we already spent money on to make it last. People have to have a decent place to work too. But the people are number one. We got good people, we can make things work till we get more money. We need to keep the good people we already have. Our infrastructure is going to help bring in the funding we need to fix everything else and to build upon the base that we have. And the facilities, eventually, nothing lasts forever. And the facilities will help the people and help the That's kind of my idea of where we need to spend our money as we go forward. And as our budget increases with people coming here and businesses coming here, and if we reallocate those funds the way the administrators, suggesting we do, we get our budget realigned where we can better utilize the money we have. Our budget will increase, and we will eventually be able to build it. That's kind of my vision of where we need to spend our money.
Mayor, I think that we agree with you. I think that we've been doing that. Our vision has been the employees. We want to keep the employees, and we want to pay them what they're worth. We want to make sure that they're happy and healthy. Infrastructure, that's why we put the bonds up. I mean, we are well aware that infrastructure is a priority for us. So yes, I'm glad you're saying that because I think that I can't speak for everyone, but I think that we all agree with what you're saying.
Kind of believe that we're all tracking on this. I made those priorities, and I see that's where the council has been going, and I want you to know that I'm behind it. And I think we all align with our priorities. I believe we're all headed in the same direction.
The next steps for you all, the next two slides basically mirror both general fund and utility fund. I have taken the pay scales that we used the last time that were approved by council. They've not been adjusted because they're not that old and they don't necessarily need to be adjusted, the pay scales at this point in time. Excuse me. But I have put some suggested changes in current pay for employees based on getting them more in line with the pay scales that have been established. We still have some positions that are between the minimum and the midpoint, which is what we'd like to shoot for. We still have some that are below the minimum, but there are some that are a multi-year approach to bringing this up to the minimum and then shooting for the midpoint. And so I will have those numbers for you at the next meeting, and we can go over that information. We can talk about the additional personnel that's been requested, and we can see how that fits within our budget parameters. The dispatch direction, police officers and firefighters, I have some information from you all that I need based on today as well as the CAD RMS system. The code enforcement officer, body worn cameras, all of those, I think we've pretty much discussed and can bring forward some information at a regular Thursday night meeting. So I'll put together those salary pay scales, cost and prioritization, your budget line item numbers, because this is just a high use, and you will get the budget line item numbers similar to what you received last year. I'll also prepare budget to actuals for last year, and then propose numbers for next year. And then you guys can start to determine where you want to allocate things. We won't get the new tax rate number until probably the end of July. So I probably won't bring the budget back to you until the first part of August, based on the information that I've gotten today and the direction we've given you. Because until we know the next tax rate that we're looking at, there's no point in belaboring this issue at this point. The county is the one that helps us with setting that tax rate or evaluating on numbers to set that tax rate. And so they've given us the preliminary tax base at 255 million. They'll get that firmed up. Then I will get all of the numbers as it relates to the revenue rate, the voter approval rate, and your de minimis rate, like we discussed last year. So we will have all that we will make decisions on the first part of August. I'd like to have the budget approved at the first meeting in September. One of the other things that I've talked to the mayor about, and we may want to consider as it relates to budgeting and time and calendaring, is that we would like to see if we can move to one meeting a month, the first of the month as mandatory, the second of the month as needed, depending upon if we can get all the business handled at the first meeting of the month. Now, a lot of that will depend on whether or not we have pressing matters. And one of the things that we did discuss is can't keep the first meeting of the month to an hour and a half or two if we're going to put everything on that.
That's why I kind of recommended this. We did this at one time before, and yeah, if we do once a month, yeah, it's going to be a marathon session. But then again, everybody's not going to serve in these positions forever. And to get good people in this community to want to serve, we got to make it palatable. A lot of people won't volunteer to serve on the council or any committees because they say, well, heck, I got to work for a living. I don't have time to do all this. So the only reason I brought this up was to maybe make it easier for people to serve. If we can do it once a month, that'd be great because we did it like this once before. And if we need a second meeting of the month to take care of stuff that needs to be taken care of, those usually were very short, to the point, we got it done. So that's just something to think about.
So why don't we just keep the two meetings and cancel the second one?
We can certainly, that's not a problem. We would do that.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but for us to get business done, sometimes you have to do it twice a month.
Especially in a fast growth time, you might need more. So I'm all
I will try it
I
and see
really
and
do
keep
not
the
function
second one
well
in
after
reserve.
like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
y'all.
Yeah, and
My alarm goes off at 8.
I feel that the way sunshine laws restrict us from communicating, uh, it's a lost opportunity for us to get together.
Well, all of your business is done at the council meeting. That's where I take direction. So we can try something along those lines if I can make it work with the agenda and the scheduling. But if it looks like we've just got too much going on, then I'll try and keep it balanced.
Well, I think, Ms. Ty, I think your idea would probably work best. Maybe we can try that. Let's just look at it that way. I'm open to ideas. I'm just trying to make it where we get other people that want to serve.
Yeah, we're just restricting ourselves if we go to one. This
Yeah,
way,
I
we
agree
still
with
have two.
one and try to put the bulk of whatever we have at the first one. But I also don't want to restrict you. And I know sometimes timelines, things don't work.
Okay. That's all the presentation material I had for today. I have kept you to 10 extra minutes. So are there any questions that you all have of staff or myself?
What's the update on the water and sewer with the bonds that passed?
They will.
You missed that. You don't get to hear it anymore.
It will come this fall. Once we finish the audit and we get the engineering done, then they will all coincide this fall. The original plan was that the bonds would not be sold until in the fall period, August, September.
Been trying the word that I've been telling people when I see them is, look, this isn't a process that's going to happen overnight. A lot of things, a lot of moving parts, but within a year we should be able to have this work done. That's reasonable. That's kind of, if you talk to people, they come to you. Within a year we ought to be able to get this done.
So we're already working on the engineering. We're talking to Kimberly Horn and moving through that process, and then we have to finish the audit, get that presented to you, because the bond folks will want that before we can actually put the monies out for bid, and then we will try and push all those through almost simultaneously, but we have just Jesus running this, so we'll have to see how we can stagger it a little bit.
Cracked the whip on it.
He cracks his own whip and spends a lot of hours, but we will do our very best.
I was just looking at the water and sewer because last I've heard, that's a lot of the holdup for sit-down restaurants.
Yes, and I have been talking with some folks about, not necessarily sit down as of yet, but I've been talking with them, and it will take them anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to build. Would coincide very nicely with us finishing that West Point.
Okay.
So as long as they know it's coming, they're willing to look at their options now, or before they want. Any other questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
See one.
Right. Shall we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Now, all in favor.
Aye.
Thank you.